real team that I hate in Chicago with every inch of my life are the Bulls. I don't hate the Hawks.
Yeah.
I really don't hate the Bears unless we play them. I really don't hate either baseball team unless we play them. I just hate the Bulls with passions. Okay, so let's get one thing straight. But I feel like Bucks fans and Bears fans can all sit around the campfire and drink a little tea and eat some s'mores, and we can have some laughs that one of us was able to get rid of Green Bay. And I will be proud to say, as a diehard Buccaneers fan, that I'm glad that we did it for the sake of us as Bucks fans, for the sake of y'all as Bears fans, for the sake of the NFL, and for the sake of this show. Because if there's one show that has the balls to call Aaron Rodgers and Russell Wilson overrated in the same sentence, this is the show. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Mack and Black. That's Mack on that side. I'm Black on this side. You have seen that we have come into this show fired up because it is now Super Bowl time, and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in the afternoon did what a lot of people didn't think we could do, which was the impossible. But Mack and I feel like we have a lot to discuss when it comes to that game. So we're going to hold that game second, okay? Because I'm not just going to praise what Tampa Bay did. I'm going to rip. No. We are going to rip the organization, Aaron Rodgers, and all the dumbass Packer fans that have been salty over the last week that would still call Aaron Rodgers the GOAT after throwing 9 years of stats at your dumbasses and you still haven't figured it out.
Man, it's the desperation this week, Nick, of Packers fans. It was like pumping into my veins, just like give me all of it, because to see Packers fans live in this delusion of like this happened, so this, Aaron, we want to blame the coach, or we want to blame the DC, or Mike Pettin got fired as their defensive coordinator, so it's like, okay, we're good now, all right. Oh, Mike Pettin's gone, and it's like there's bigger problems than that. So yeah, I can't wait to talk about that because I've got some gas for them too.
Yes, sir. Mario Santiago's in the chat. He says, "Go Chiefs." If I'm not mistaken, Mario is either a Giants or Jets fan, so I'm assuming that's from the Brady hate, and I will respect that. I respect that. I want everybody to think that we're not going to win because, as far as many people said, we weren't going to beat the Washington football team because their defense is so great. We weren't going to beat the Saints because they beat us twice already. And we weren't going to beat Green Bay because Tampa Bay can't play in the cold. Every excuse you guys give us, we overcome. But we're not going to go off on that yet because I want to get to the Buffalo-Kansas City game first. Let's get to that game because I feel like we had a lot of questions, with the game as far as the health of Patrick Mahomes. We saw him leave the game 2 weeks ago against Cleveland with the Nets. First, they said it was a concussion. Then they said they turned it into a neck stinger. Then in 4 days, he can clear concussion protocol. And so he goes into the game on Sunday evening, actually. And I feel like somewhere I kept saying I didn't think that Buffalo. I never thought that Buffalo was going to win the game. I really thought Kansas City was going to come out guns blazing, and they kind of did. But that first little bit of the game where Buffalo's defense started getting to Mahomes, and they was able to commit a turnover, and they were up 9-3 at one point. And I kept saying to myself, I feel like Buffalo's defense is going to give this up somewhere. And they did. They ended up giving up a couple touchdowns. Next thing you know, it's 17-9. Travis Kelce, absolutely a monster again in this game. There was a couple of plays where, Mahomes is scrambling and all of a sudden Kelce is wide open and there's not a guy from Buffalo around him in about 5 or 10 yards. But when I was looking at them offensively, I thought Buffalo had a chance to really go down the field and challenge this secondary by the Chiefs, and they didn't. I feel like, there was some chains that were put on Josh Allen. They really weren't able to get their offense going until it was too late, and they're already losing by almost 3 scores. So Kansas City does end up winning the game, back-to-back AFC championships for the Kansas City Chiefs, and they'll be heading their way to Tampa Bay. Mack, your thoughts on the game on Sunday?
Yeah, man. First of all, I want to just before we do anything, I want to shout out Christian Simpson too for coming on last week, man. That was
most def.
And the only reason why I mentioned it is just because I can't help but think about like our discussion and like how I felt. I really didn't think Buffalo had a chance in this game, and they kind of proved me wrong in the first quarter and a half, like you talked about. They're like, their defense was making the stops that they needed to do, but Buffalo needs a next level running back. That's what they really need right now. And I saw, I think I recognized that with no Zach Moss. And it's not like Zach Moss is like this, oh my God, talent himself. But when you only have Devin Singletary, and then you're kind of like working on 4 and 5 wide receiver sets that Buffalo is, you have to be able to execute, and they weren't able to execute on some of the bigger plays. And then, of course, Kansas City, like you can't give them any leeway. You can't give them 1 inch because they will take that. And you mentioned Travis Kelce. I mean, is there a more unguardable tight end in the league right now? I'm not exactly sure how you guard a guy who can, run routes like that, run like that, stop and go like that, and then again the strength to get in the end zone, and I just feel like right now Kansas City was just so many levels above Buffalo. No disrespect to Buffalo, I just think that Kansas City right now has that type of firepower. I still wasn't that impressed with their defense because I thought it would be a blowout. I thought Kansas City's defense was going to come in and be able to make the stops needed to give Patrick and company the ball and get them in the end zone. But I think overall, man, I think what you come around the corner saying is that we know who Kansas City is now. Like, it's not like we didn't know who Kansas City was, but I think now we also know who Buffalo was, and that, again, they had a lot of holes, especially on the offensive line, running back, and, I still think right now they're going to be back, but that was got to be a little bit heart-wrenching for Buffalo fans. I love Buffalo fans. I don't know why. There's something about Buffalo fans. They're idiots. They jump through flaming tables. Like, there's something like likable about their unlikability. And then like they do charitable stuff too. Like, I don't know if you remember a couple years ago the Andy Dalton stuff where he helped eliminate Baltimore and get Buffalo into the playoffs. And then their whole fan base basically started sending donations over to Andy Dalton's foundation. So I like Buffalo. I just think they're not there yet, and the AFC, I think, clearly has a top dog, and that's Kansas City. Hey Nick, you're really low, buddy. I can barely hear you. Steve, is that guy? I can barely hear him, Steve. I don't know if you turned down his volume or try it again, Nick. I can hear you off in the distance. Yeah. But yeah, man, in the meantime, I definitely wanted to say one more thing about Kansas City is that I think Patrick Mahomes is like the embodiment of what you want in a quarterback. Like everybody that's going to be drafting this year, and everybody that's going to be looking for a QB this year, I think like you can see the competitive nature of Patrick Mahomes and the leadership and stuff that we've mentioned about Tom Brady in the past, of how Tom is just so good at commanding the room and commanding his teammates. And it feels like Patrick is in that mold as well. So that's another thing I want to mention. It's just really, really crazy to see his progression. As you mentioned, this guy's never lost outside of overtime, I believe, in the playoffs,
right,
if I'm correct.
Right.
Now you're perfect, Nick. Go right ahead.
I'm better? Okay,
excellent,
cool.
Yeah. Excellent, yeah.
Yeah, my fault, dude. My headphones is over here. The cord is nicking and moving, and it's driving me nuts. But what I wanted to say earlier was Buffalo struck gold when they traded their late first round draft pick, to Minnesota to get Stephon Diggs. Hey, I wouldn't be shocked if Buffalo did it again this year. I think the running back class this year is much better than it was last year. You're going to have, you got Najee Harris coming out of Alabama if he makes it that low. You're going to have the kid Swift from Ohio State if he makes it that low. There's a real good running back class, but I wouldn't be shocked if Buffalo did that again. But I'm with you. I thought you saw I think there was three things. I think you hit two of them. The offensive line, there's holes definitely on the offensive line. Running back, they definitely could use a big time playmaker at running back. But I think Buffalo needs pass rushers too. I thought that was one thing they struggled with in a game against Kansas City last week was they had a hard time really getting a consistent pass rush against Patrick Mahomes, and I think, they was making him comfortable to where, he was able to find Kelsey wide open. He was able to find, make plays and whatnot. So I think that's another thing that Buffalo could look at. But, they had a really good season, at the end of the day. Josh Allen really took a step up from where he was last year, and I think he, the sky's the limit, for Josh Allen, because I think personally, if you could get him to stop making those dumbass decisions by throwing his ball off his back foot and make him realize that he doesn't have to make. And, that's what ended up killing Jameis Winston at the end of the day. Instead of just taking the L and realize there's another play, you're desperately trying to make plays that aren't there, and it's putting your team in trouble. And I think with Josh Allen, because we've seen improvements in his game, I think next year you're going to see a cutoff of a lot of that stuff and finally sinking in, okay, I'll take the sack, I'll go down, but I know we can get a chunk of yards in the next play. So if he can make that decision, Buffalo's going to be good for years. But you're right. In this game, Kansas City was just obviously two steps ahead of Buffalo's defense. In Jim Schwartz is in in Philadelphia, but Buffalo's defense, they were two steps ahead of them. So, but good win for Kansas City, and like I said, back-to-back AFC titles now, and they'll be heading to Tampa Bay because. No, go ahead. Hold on.
Before we get into Tampa Bay, I really want to ask you a question. Have you ever seen anything like this, Patrick Mahomes? Like the start to his career. We all know the first year he sat out, played the 17th game or 16th game of the season, and then the team obviously moved on from Alex Smith, and the next year he was in. But I think I mentioned it briefly. Has never lost a non-overtime playoff game. 2 straight AFC championships, 2 straight Super Bowl appearances. And then on top of that, I mean, Buffalo, let's just put it this way. Buffalo's got some pros on that defense, and he made them look really bad on many, many occasions, including you mentioned it with Josh Allen, and it must be frustrating for Josh Allen because you're on the bench looking on the field, and Patrick Mahomes is making these back foot throws, and he's leaning on his back foot. He's not doing any sort of form or function. It's just straight slinging the ball. And I think in his mind, he's like, I could do that too, but you really can't. This guy is just next level when it comes to quarterbacks. Have you ever seen anybody with that type of success to start their career? I mean, maybe Big Ben might be a candidate for that.
Yeah, Big Ben is in there. Well, Donovan McNabb really didn't start getting success until maybe his second year in the league.
Right.
Even though he was a rookie his second year. But I mean,
it's just hard for me to imagine.
Right, because because the easy part is I could have been like, well, where's Peyton? But remember, Peyton Manning struggled his first 2 years in Indianapolis before they started going on the tear, So I guess I think the thing with Patrick Mahomes is that he's in a system. I don't see the one thing that you won't get from Mahomes that you were getting with Tom Brady was everyone was saying, well, Brady's a system quarterback because he was a 6th round pick from Michigan. No one thought about him. Next thing you know, this man is in, 4 or 5 Super Bowls at the time. And then when you were ready to give him that greatness, you just all of a sudden just assuming, well, he's a system quarterback. He's a system quarterback. Right. No one says that about Patrick Mahomes. No one says that he's a system quarterback, and I feel like Kansas City did the right thing. It's almost eerily similar to what Green Bay did with Aaron Rodgers, and I think ultimately it's going to do with Aaron Rodgers going into Jordan Love, where it's you got a guy that you don't really need to come in now. You need to, let him groom, let him understand the system, let him this and that, and then we're ready to bring him in. And I think, between Andy Reid and Matt Nagy at the time and Eric Bieniemy, they have really molded Patrick Mahomes into a quarterback, and the funny thing is it's all coaching, because he still had the same strong arm when he was in Texas Tech, and that team couldn't win for squat, but you knew that the talent was there. You know what I'm saying? So that's why I'm always big on when you have quote unquote real coaching with certain teams throughout the entire sports world. Coaching and leadership can always bring out something in a player. And I think Patrick Mahomes is that guy where we saw the athleticism. Now you add that with great coaching, and he's the quarterback that he is now. You know what I'm saying? That's why I was always saying, when you're looking at, and the NFC is going to need to catch up soon, because think about it. You got Tom, that's 43, Drew's 40 something, Aaron Rodgers is 37. Russell Wilson, believe it or not, is getting up there in age. That's all the legends on that side. And you're seeing the young guns where it's Lamar and Patrick Mahomes and Baker Mayfield and Josh Allen. And there's a few other, we're going to mention Joe Burrow, and we're going to mention, Deshaun Watson, Justin Herbert is in there. We'll see what Denver does. There's just so many great names coming out, dude. So the AFC is like locked and loaded for the next 10 years, and the NFC is kind of behind the 8 ball right now. But yeah, dude, I'm with you. We really haven't seen anyone like that, because in our time, you and me coming up, Peyton was slow, Tom slow, Drew slow, Brad Johnson was slow, Trent Dilfer was slow, Eli Manning is slow. It's just pocket quarterbacks. But now you got the dual threats. We had the Michael Vick and the Donovan and the Cams and now the Mahomes and the Allens and the Lamars and the dual threat quarterback now. Yeah, that pocket game is a thing of the past. So yeah, we haven't seen anyone with the athleticism like that. Basically, to answer your question.
The only reason why I even mention it is just because it's like, when you watch this guy again, like we joke about it every week, like calling him Jesus and all the jokes we make, but in reality, man, this guy has done something special that we haven't seen in quite a while, and he has a chance to do something special next Sunday, right? And that's kind of like the whole sort of that's going to be the turning point, right? Like if he can come out and get 2 in 3.5 years, 4 years,
right?
That is going to be pace that you'll see. Tom will probably, Tom Brady is what I think he's in his 10th Super Bowl now. So if you're looking at it, Tom has 10 appearances in 20 plus years,
right?
And then you've got Patrick, who's got going on 2 appearances in 4 years. So just to me, like I didn't want us to brush past that, because it gets easy to say, Kansas City's really good, Buffalo sucks, Patrick Mahomes just did whatever he did. But in reality, I think what we're really seeing is, and I'm glad you mentioned the pass rush, because without a pass rush on Patrick Mahomes, you're done. You're just not going to win the game, and he's gonna beat you up. So I was really impressed with Patrick Mahomes, but again, it comes down to next Sunday, right? And what he can do to cement that start to his legacy. But obviously, he's got a really good team to go through.
Yes, he does. And that leads us into what was the earlier game. And I ain't gonna lie, bro. This was another one of those games where, obviously last week I came in a little humble, but at the end of the show, I went on an epic rant, and shout out to Diego Flores who made that clip, because he beat me to the punch, because I was going to do it. But if you're a friend of me on Facebook, you follow me on Instagram. If you're on my Snapchat, I haven't stopped all week. I found every way to troll and hate and just clown Aaron Rodgers. But Tampa Bay ends up winning last week 31-26. Tom Brady had 280 yards, 3 TDs, but he had 3 interceptions. And, last night, I was watching Inside the NFL, and you and I kind of briefly talked about this earlier, and I mentioned that I was going to defend Matt LaFleur in his fourth quarter decision, and I'm going to do it here in a second. But when you watch this game, I feel like both teams were playing chess, and Tampa Bay they were dominating the chess game, and then Green Bay started figuring some things out, and the game was getting really good. And at the end of the day, Tampa Bay was the one that said checkmate. And what I mean by that was, I'm looking at the last basically minute of the first half. Mm-hmm. So Tampa Bay gets the interception. Was there holding? I'll admit there was defensive holding, but there was holding all day. No penalties were called in damn near 3/4 of the game. So the referees were letting both sides get away with a lot. But Murphy Bunting gets the interception. So now there's about 30 seconds to go. Tampa Bay is 4th and 3. Tom Brady throws the ball to Leonard Fournette. Leonard Fournette gets the first down. And then Tampa runs another play, and it's now about 10 seconds to go in a half, and you have about a 51-yard field goal. And don't get me wrong, dude, Ryan Suckup has been money. We want to talk about MVPs in Tampa Bay. Ryan Suckup, I'm not saying he's going to win the MVP of the league, but as far as how important he was to Tampa Bay, dude, we've gone through almost 3, 4, 5 kickers in over the last 6 years, and we finally got a guy that made the easy chip shots, made some field goals I didn't think he had the leg for, but it's a 53-yarder, and Bruce Arians says, no risk it, no biscuit, let's go for it. And what do they do? They bring out the X factor that we talked about last week, Scotty Miller. Goes against King, gets behind him. Tom Brady gets the perfect throw. What could have been 17-10 just made it 21-10. Then Tampa's defense says, we're not done. You get the fumble from Aaron Jones. And, dude, I swear to God on everything I own, I knew that touchdown was coming the minute they hiked the ball. If you watch that game, Cameron Brate was open as soon as he broke. Soon as he broke, I was like, dude, Brate's wide open. Bam. Tom Brady hits him. It's 28-10. But then Tom, for whatever reason, started just throwing these jump balls to Mike Evans, and I don't really feel Mike Evans being that kind of wide receiver. And Tom Brady throws 3 picks.
Yeah.
Then it's 31-23. And Tom Brady has now thrown his 3rd interception. And Green Bay goes down the field. They're going down the field. Actually, I take that back. They kick the field goal to make it 31-23. Green Bay comes down. It's 1st and goal at the 8. And this is where I'm going to defend Matt LaFleur. You go 1st and goal. They throw the pass to wherever. It wasn't even close. 2nd and goal. Oh, yeah, by the way, Green Bay fans, since you guys want to be delusional, ask me how Aaron Rodgers got past Shaq Barrett. Oh, yeah, that's right. There was a hold right there. Please ignore that, though, dumbasses. Nonetheless, though, Aaron Rodgers misses Devontae Adams, overthrows him in the end zone. It's not even close. 3rd and goal. By the way, Green Bay fans, look at that play. How do you think Aaron Rodgers got around that corner again? Because whoever's on the right tackle side held Shaq Barrett once again. Ignore that part too, idiots. Now, hold Shaq Barrett. Shaq Barrett has a chance to get inside, or Aaron Rodgers gets outside. Everyone's making fun of him because they thought he could have run the ball. Devin White's right there ready to hit him as much as people want to deny it. It's incomplete. So Matt LaFleur goes and kicks the field goal. And the whole world is like, God, Matt LaFleur's a dumbass. How could you put the game back in Tom Brady's hands? Because your defense just picked off Tom Brady 3 times.
Right. Okay.
And the Bucs offense only scored 3 points after they just made it 28-10. So once you made it 28-10 with 3 minutes into the second half in the third quarter, you have now shut out Tom Brady in the offense. They can't run. They can't pass. All of a sudden, Mike Evans can't catch anything. And Tom Brady's making dumbass throws because Green Bay at that point was starting to get pressure in Tom Brady's face.
Yeah.
That's why you go for 3. I understand the argument of saying, well, it's Aaron Rodgers and he's the great number 12 and he's so great and he's this and that. Aaron Rodgers just missed 3 easy passes in that drive. What faith do you have to make you think that he was going to be able to get that 4th? You don't. The only worst thing, and you mentioned this earlier, and I thought it was a great point. The worst thing you could have got out of that, the kicking the field goal, outside of letting Tom Brady run out the clock, was you gave him now 17 more yards from his backside. Because if you go for 4th and you don't convert, now it's 1st and 10 for the Bucs at their own 8.
Yep.
You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
Now you put them at their 25. But I'm with Matt LaFleur. I'm like, dude, my defense has just been BS for the first half. They've come out and picked off the goal 3 times. Can I get one more? And they would have had you not blatantly held Tyler Johnson's jersey and the referee finally threw the flag and called that interference, because at that point the game's over with. So I think Matt LaFleur I don't think he deserved as much flack as he should have, because the GOAT should have at some point put the team on his back, or the alleged GOAT, the fake GOAT, the faux GOAT, as Skip Bayless was calling him. This clown went 4-for-11. Dude, you picked off Tom Brady 3 times and barely got any points on that. In 2 of those interceptions, it was 3 and outs. GOATs don't make moves like that. GOATs somehow make you give up points. Excuse me, when you fumbled the football in the third quarter, what did the real GOAT do? They scored a touchdown. When Sean Murphy-Bunting picked you off at the end of the first half, what did the GOAT do? He threw the ball to Scotty Miller and found him 4 touchdowns. That's what GOATs do. Pretenders, overrated quarterbacks, a la Aaron Rodgers, goes 4-for-11 in the fourth quarter, goes 0-for-3 in the most important drive of Green Bay season in the last drive that you have, and you sucked so bad that your head coach didn't even have faith in your dumb ass to get the ball in there, and he had to take points and rely on his defense and piss off to the Green Bay Packer organization and Matt LaFleur while I'm defending your dumbass for making your defensive coordinator the scapegoat. The same guy the same defense that just picked off Tom Brady for 3 passes, and you couldn't score jack on all 3 of them. So
Let me ask you. Other than Kevin King, was the Packers defense that bad? I don't think so, right? Blame this. No, they weren't that bad. Other than Kevin King was the worst player on the field that day, but to blame Mike Pettin and fire him as if this Packers defense was to blame, when you've got a GM that should be taking some flack, you've got a head coach that should be taking some flack, you got a quarterback who, dare I say it, Nick, is a diva.
Yes.
Have you ever heard anybody give Aaron Rodgers the diva stamp? I'm willing to give it to him right now, because I was willing to give him the benefit of the doubt when it came to Mike McCarthy and all the sort of rumors about him and Mike McCarthy, and Mike McCarthy's kind of a hard ass and whatever. And I gave Aaron Rodgers the benefit of the doubt there. When Matt LaFleur first came to town and they hired him, remember, Aaron Rodgers said some weird, shady shit in the media. He had said something along the lines of we'll see how it works out, or whatever it may be. And then on top of that, after the game, he has this I'm going to take my ball home after I lost feel, when he's like, yeah, a lot of things could change. We're going to change, and kind of leave. almost leaving it out there that, you know what, I'm not happy. You know, if you couldn't make it any more obvious, Aaron Rodgers, you're clearly not happy about Jordan Love. You're clearly not happy about the fact that, I mean, Nick, they had 7 draft picks this year. Only one of them saw the field this year. That is not a good GM move. I'm sorry, right? Like, and the one that saw it was A.J. Dillon, who A.J. Dillon shouldn't even have seen the field this year just because Jamal Williams and Aaron Jones are constantly hurt or constantly inconsistent. So, yeah, I think Aaron Rodgers, it's time to not only put the overrated and non-GOAT status on him, but, like, this guy's acting like a diva and he's not getting called out for it.
Exactly, dude. And you know, here's the delusion when it comes to Green Bay. In the regular season, you know, so let's go back to the draft. Green Bay traded up to get Jordan Love, okay?
Right.
At the time, you know, Justin Jefferson's still on the board and some of these other wide receivers, but Green Bay decided to go with Jordan Love. And the media's freaking out. They're like, oh, what does that say about Aaron Rodgers? How does he feel? Did they talk to him? You know, the diva-ish. You know,
right.
Let's give Cat I could vaccine. Shut up, idiots. So they go and they draft Jordan Love. And here come Packer fans. Why didn't you get your wide receiver help? So what does Aaron Rodgers do in the first game of the season against Minnesota? Comes out and threw for like 380 and 4 touchdowns. Yeah. So during the regular season, minus the game against Tampa where he didn't even throw a touchdown, and minus the game against Indianapolis and even the game against Minnesota. Yeah, you know, that was their 3 losses. Aaron Rodgers, look, he's the GOAT. He doesn't even have help. We don't even need help. These are the same guys when they were struggling defensively said they needed Will Fuller the 5th. Like all of a sudden he was going to be the godsend to the end of all problems that is Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah.
We don't even need no wide receivers. Look, that's why he the GOAT. He just threw 42 touchdowns and 6 interceptions, and we gonna run through the NFC like a hot knife through butter. The minute they lost, right after all that crying, like they didn't even need a wide receiver, and all of a sudden, you know, Aaron Rodgers the second coming. The minute they lost, I don't blame Aaron Rodgers for leaving Green Bay because they didn't give him no help. Yeah. Dude, you were just crying he didn't need it. Now all of a sudden you're upset that he needed help? Dude, yeah. I swear to God, dude, Green Bay fans are delusional. They're delusional. I made this comment. I forget where. Oh, as a matter of fact, it was on my Snapchat. If you took 90% of Packer fans, because they're all not idiots, just the most of them are. If you took 90% of Green Bay Packer fans and you added them with 98% of New Orleans Saint fans, and you put them in one room, you have 100% of idiots. Both of those fan bases are delusional. And Christian Randall, who's watching, says he's got the Bucs winning by 3 points. I'm going to tell you what. I'm coming with the same approach in this game as I have in the last 3 games. In the fact of, except for the Washington game, I knew we were going to beat Washington.
Yeah.
But the continuous hate, like everyone, like this is how salty Green Bay Packer fans. Oh, it took Tom Brady to come down there and get y'all into the championship. You're right. Because the same quarterback that you just had for 15 years only got you for 1, and yet you claim he's a GOAT. So you sent me a meme, and let's go ahead and bring it up. You know, my buddy J. Cat Morrison, and he's a really good friend of mine, is a diehard 49ers fan. And the one thing that he said at the beginning of the year was that the Super Bowl would have to go through San Francisco. The NFC would have to go through San Francisco. Where I just realized it's the biggest farce is that it's Green Bay that you have to get through to get to the Super Bowl. So let's look at it. In 2011, the Giants did it. They went to the Super Bowl. In 2012, the 49ers did it. Yeah. And they lost to Baltimore in the Super Bowl. How about last year? The 49ers beat Green Bay to get to the Super Bowl. How about in 2016 when the Atlanta Falcons beat the overrated Aaron Rodgers and the Green Bay Packers? They went to the Super Bowl. How about when Larry Fitzgerald ran all through that Green Bay team in that game, and they went to the NFC title game, but they lost to Carolina. The fact of the matter is that if you want success in the playoffs, just beat Green Bay, because you're either going to go to the NFC title game or you're going to the Super Bowl. It's
Yeah.
one of the two. Dude, that team is overrated. Aaron Rodgers is overrated. As a matter of fact, I would even go off on a limb and call him a stat patter because, as I mentioned last week, it's easy to throw touchdown passes against the Bears, who he's owned, against the Lions, who suck, against Minnesota's, whose defense isn't that great. And he throws almost damn near 20 touchdowns against those three teams 6 times a year alone. That's crazy.
To me, I think all you really have to do is look at the schedule for the Packers to really understand. Like, I think you talked about the hot start that they got off to. And one thing that really, really kind of kills me is, okay, they started off the season with the Vikings and the Lions, who you just mentioned they own, right? The Saints, that game against the Saints was a good game for Aaron Rodgers. They came out on top. But then they beat Atlanta, took a bye week, took the L to you guys, win against the Texans, who suck, win against the Vikings, who suck, lose against the 49ers, who, by the way, were terrible because they had nobody left from injury by week 9. Win against Jaguars, who suck. They lose to the Colts, who we know wasn't that great of a team, and then beat the Bears, who you mentioned they own, beat the Eagles, who we know suck, beat the Lions, who we know suck. Panthers were underperforming when they beat them. Titans have turned out to be not that great of a team, and then the Bears. So, like, really, when you look at the hardest games of the season, there's only one game they won against a really tough opponent. That was that New Orleans game. Otherwise, you're pretty much looking at a team that had most of its wins come against bad teams. Now, okay, I'm not going to give it, I hear what people say, well, you have to beat the teams that you're facing, and, if teams are bad, you still got to beat. Yeah, no, trust me, I get that. But to misrepresent this Packers team as some sort of, like, elite team was super, 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 like, insulting from Packers fans, as if, like, people don't have intelligence to look that, Aaron Rodgers has one receiver. That's it. He has one receiver. I don't care how much, like, Valdez-Scantling and Alan Lazard. Like, you can convince me all you want about how good those guys are. That is not the level of NFL wide receiver that you need as a number 2 and a number 3. I don't care what anyone says. He has no tight end. Remember, Robert Tonyan came out of nowhere, and, like, good for him. He made a name for himself, but no tight end. And you got, like, what, Mercedes Lewis and some of these other guys. I mean,
who's way past his prime.
Way past his prime. And you got the running back position, which you're pretty deep at. So, and then remember, their offensive line, and that's another thing that really blows me when it comes to Packers fans. This guy had one of the best offensive lines in the game this year. I mean, this guy had, I think, 3 Pro Bowlers on his offensive line. Mm-hmm. And I know they had some injuries late in the season, but the excuses just continue to mount for them. And it's just like one thing after another. And it's like, no, Kevin King is the reason. Or, you know what, Matt LaFleur sucks. He should have went for it on 4th down. Or whatever it may be, it's never, ever Aaron's fault. And like you said, the way that Aaron's playing in the media right now with, I know he came back and clarified, no, I'm not going anywhere. But then why would you say that in the first place then? Like, it just, you're clearly planting seeds and clearly putting it out there because you know that right now, this offseason, there's going to be a lot of quarterback movement this offseason. We talked about Matthew Stafford last week. We already talked about Deshaun Watson last week. Jared Goff is on the block right now and being actively
Carson Wentz is on the block.
Carson Wentz. A year after the Panthers gave that money to Teddy Bridgewater, they're already looking for alternate options right now.
And what show kept saying that Teddy Bridgewater was a fraud?
Yeah, and we knew from he was having good games, but then you realize towards the end of the season, this isn't going to work out with Carolina because first of all, Teddy Bridgewater does not have the accuracy to play in that type of offensive style, which is again a running gun style where you're going to be chucking the ball all over the place. You turn over the ball a lot with quarterbacks like that. So, yeah, I think we saw the writing on the wall. And all you have to look at now is the microscope that quarterbacks are being put under. and the lack of microscope that you see for Aaron Rodgers. Like there's no sense of like accountability for Aaron. Did he have a good game? Did he have a bad game? Was he as accurate as he could have been? I mean, let's be honest. Remember when they said this guy doesn't turn over the ball, he doesn't throw interceptions. That's one thing you can count on. And the next thing you know, he's giving away the ball to the Buccaneers like it's nobody's business. So
yeah,
you got to really, really dig deep. If you're a Packers fan, first of all, condolences and sorry for your loss, and take that L with respect and with dignity, but don't come back and start talking about how Tom Brady's overrated. Like I saw your statuses this week, and it was just I laughed hysterically. And I want to store Packers tears in a vial, and I just want to take shots of it every now and then just to really like get the juices flowing, because there's nothing better to me than delusional Packers fans who continue to look around and point. Mike McCarthy was the first one. Then it was Ted Thompson, because Ted Thompson, he drafted well, but no, he's not doing well this year. So Ted Thompson's the bad guy now. Now Matt LaFleur, remember his first year, they lambasted him because he came in from Tennessee without really a lot of clout. And then he comes in and boom, has an amazing season. All of a sudden they switch their tune. No, Matt LaFleur's great. He works really well with Aaron Rodgers. They get along, And then the whole draft thing, like you're acting as if, first of all, you're acting as if the Packers haven't been one of the best drafting teams over the last 10 years. They draft really, really well in Green Bay.
They really do.
And to I know I brought it up earlier this year, but the only reason why I bring it up is because you can't have only 1 out of 7 picks play during the season. That means that basically you were drafting for the future. And when you got a quarterback who's not aging any less right now, he's clearly going upwards in age and upwards in the kind of limited mobility. That's another thing. His footwork is 2 years ago, Aaron Rodgers could tap dance in the pocket and kind of get out and make it happen when he's not injured. But the lack of footwork and mobility is so obvious when you look at it, because the offensive line starts to kind of give him a little bit of insecurity, and all of a sudden his footwork goes and he starts throwing picks and starts making mistakes. So I just feel that Packers fans need to really dig deep into what the issue is. And I first of all, I don't think the issue is Aaron Rodgers. Let's just put it that way. I think he's overrated, but I don't think he is the issue there, right? I think the main issue there is that there is a lack of accountability because you have Aaron Rodgers as your quarterback. It gives you a false sense of security that, all right, we're in it next year. Don't worry. We still got number 12. We'll be back. And, don't worry. We'll see. I saw a lot of that this week. We'll see you next year, guys. Like, don't worry. We're going to be back next year. All right, good luck, man. But if you have that mentality every year, trust me, you're not going to be doing well.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. And I mentioned I was watching NFL films yesterday, or inside the NFL, and they were showing the highlights of the game. And at the end, you saw a lot of the Packer guys, their heads were down. They're like, yeah, we'll be back here next year. And, some of them looked at the trophy ceremony when Tampa Bay got the NFC title ceremony. But, you're right. You come with the mentality, yeah, we're going to be back next year. Yeah, you are. But then once again, you're just another meme waiting to happen when you take L's. And it's the same thing with the New Orleans Saints. Their fans will say, we run the South. Okay, but for a team that ran the South and for a team that beat Tampa pretty handily the first 2 games, you guys were very pedestrian in that game against us when it really counted. And, you would have thought all the excuses that everyone tried to make when it came to Tampa Bay and in the game, and where it's like, oh, it's going to be so cold, and everyone was worried about the snow, but then the snow was only going to happen earlier, so they're able to clean out the field. And it was like every excuse they tried to make for Tampa Bay not to win this football game, Tampa Bay went out there and pretty much hit Green Bay in the mouth. And the guy out of all this who deserves the biggest raise out of anybody, in my opinion, is Todd Bowles. Actually, it's 2 people. It's Todd Bowles and it's Vita Vea. Because Vita Vea coming back, and Ndamukong Suh was on Inside the NFL, and he said something that I thought was funny, but he was absolutely right. He said, when Vita came back, Vita took on more double teams than I did. He was like, when he was gone, they was always double teaming me. But they would forget about Nunez Roches, and they would forget about William Golston and this and that. Dude, if you look at that game, especially in the second half, when they was double teaming Vea at will, who was the guy that was always in the backfield? It was Shaq Barrett. When Vita would switch on the other side, they would double team him. You have JPP going against your second string lineman because Bakhtiari is out, and Jason Pierre-Paul was in Aaron Rodgers' face at will in that second half. They did the same exact thing in the game against Green Bay Sunday that they did back in week 6, and that was rattle Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers is 0-42 when they trail by, what is it, like 4 points in like the fourth quarter or something like that, or the second half. He's not a come from behind quarterback. He can dominate you and put the foot on the gas, but when he's behind, he can't do it. And twice when he started getting rattled against the same team, Tampa Bay didn't have to blitz at will to get to the quarterback. And I think we'll get Christian on next week, and we'll bring him in to talk about the Super Bowl game, and not to get too deep, but to go back to the Kansas City Chiefs, they're missing 2 key pieces on their end.
Yep.
So you have 2 starting tackles. You have 2 tackles that are going to make their first start in the biggest game of the year against one of the sack kings of Shaq Barrett and an experienced veteran in JPP. And then you got 2 inside guards that's got to go against a fresh and healthy Vita Vea and a determined Ndamukong Suh. And both of these, between the guards and the center, all 3 of these guys rated under 70 with Pro Football Focus. Take that for what it is. If they don't step up, Patrick Mahomes is going to have a long-ass day because Tampa Bay is going to be in his face at will, and it's going to test that foot. Like, I don't think that foot really got tested last week, and it should be fine by Sunday, but you never know, dude. But Todd Bowles trusted Carlton Davis, especially on Devontae Adams, trusted Jamel Dean. They missed 2 of their safeties. Jordan Whitehead got hurt. Antoine Winfield didn't even play. But Mike Edwards was still a monster playing safety back there. And there's just this rejuvenation in Tampa. And just to see Levante David and Mike Evans, those 2 names specifically, who's been on this team for almost 7+ years and didn't even sniff the playoffs. And now you're in the biggest show on earth in the Super Bowl in a week. It just felt good seeing those guys be happy. But starting Monday, you now got to get back to, the celebration game is over, and you got to get back to business. But I'm just happy where Tampa Bay is at. And every chance I had to get a chance to troll Aaron Rodgers and their dumbass fans as a whole, I was going to. But, I'm never shy, about going against the opinion, the grand opinion of things. But I always like to have my stats backed up, so I'm just not talking out the side of my neck. But when I've been saying, when I tell you your quarterback is 1-4 in championship games, and you want to show me the defensive stats, dude, your quarterback right now is not playing well. See, I had somebody on my Facebook try to argue me that Tom Brady had a mediocre game. No, he had a mediocre half. That's how I know you didn't watch the game. If you watch the game, you're going to tell me between the first half and that first 5 minutes of the third quarter that Tom Brady wasn't on his game as he was going to be, then you're nuts. If you're looking at Aaron Rodgers' numbers and you're like, well, look at him. He threw for over 300 yards and had 3 TDs. He just had the one unfortunate pick. But you don't want to talk about the fact that your quarterback went 4 for 11 in the fourth quarter, which included 2 3-and-outs on 2 turnovers, and he was so bad on the last drive for Green Bay that Matt LaFleur took a field goal to have to trust his defense, dude. So again, you're trying to clown Matt LaFleur. How about you clown your quarterback for even putting Matt LaFleur in that position in the first place if he would have played better? But like you said earlier, it's the never-ending crying and tears of Green Bay fans, and it's now 10 years. of them being like, they're like, you haven't done anything in 20 years, bitch. You haven't done anything in 10, and you have one of the best quarterbacks in the game per se. So what are you talking about?
Yeah, and I think it's even more
Delusional
hilarious.
morons.
Yeah, what's even more hilarious, Nick, is when you talk to them about their team and their like quarterback, and then they go, "Well, your quarterback didn't," and it's like, but that's not what we're talking about right now, right? Like we're talking about you and your quarterback, and I think I saw so many people on your Facebook. How did Tom Brady do? Well, I mean, he won the game, so like I think if we're gonna give somebody flack, we're gonna give the person who lost the game. But yeah, I think it's gonna be interesting, Nick. I really, really, I have a really good feeling that the 49ers are going to be moving for Aaron Rodgers soon. I really do. I think the Jimmy Garoppolo situation has ended. They will pay him too much if they keep him this year, and he has, I think, like something like a $26 million cap hold this year. So getting rid of him makes a lot of sense, but I think what makes a lot more sense is maybe swapping him and adding picks to a deal for Aaron Rodgers. But I'm not exactly sure that's the point of it, but I think what I'm thinking now is like, now more than ever, Packers fans have to start to realize that, like, time is ticking, man. There's no there's no like next year. If this shit happens against next year, Nick, are they just going to keep going next year? Next year's our year. We're going to really put it to him. It's like, dude, this guy is damn near 40 years old. Like we talked about. I mean, one thing that Aaron Rodgers, I always gave him credit for, and I hated doing it, but he was always really nimble. His footwork was always really, really good, and he was always able to get space between him and the defensive player. He was always able to at least give himself 5 yards to make a throw it out of bounds, throw it at somebody's feet, and that's lost. That's completely gone, and you can see it now with the effective pass rush, which, by the way, next year, you're going to be looking at a team in Detroit that's going to be trying to, obviously rebuild. And then you're looking at a team like Minnesota that's kind of stuck in their own sort of rut. And then they've got the Bears who are stuck in a rut of their own and really need to make a move here. So I think the Packers like continuously see the future as this very bright thing because the division sucks and you're always going to have the North. But if Chicago can take a step up and get a quarterback, if Detroit can, like I said, I don't know about the Matt Stafford stuff, but if Detroit can, continue to play them tough, they're not an easy out themselves. And then Minnesota, I mean, they've beaten the Packers this year, even them sucking. So, yeah, Packers fans have to dig deep and really figure out what the plan is moving forward. And I think the plan is probably that Aaron Rodgers is not going to be there for very much longer.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I think I too think he's going to be going soon. As a matter of fact, dude, I can't believe this is going to come out of my mouth, but it's been on my mind for the last 3 days. Let's say, hypothetically speaking for this conversation, let's say if Tampa wins next Sunday, and let's say if Tampa repeats next year, Tom Brady's done. Like, what else is there to do? Your kids are getting older. Gisele's waiting for you to just come and stay home. You've won 8 Super Bowls. Walk off in the sunset, right? What if Aaron Rodgers stays in Green Bay one more year, has a season like this, and it's like, that's it, I'm out?
Yeah. I
would not be shocked. I would not be shocked if Tampa came a call. Do you know how much of a dynamic this show would be if I had to now root for the guy that I have been deucing on for the last better part of 7-8 years?
That would be fun to listen to. He is here's the thing. He's a free agent. He has a potential out in 2022 where he could possibly void the contract, and the Packers would get some money, so I'm sure they wouldn't mind that if everything goes well. But he would be 39 in 2022, and here's the thing, man. I think we are so used to seeing guys like Brady, guys like Breeze, guys like even Phillip Rivers you can throw into there, even though he's not the best quarterback to name for this. I think we're so spoiled with thinking that 40-something-year-old quarterbacks can do it. Like, even look at Ben Roethlisberger, Nick. the Pittsburgh Steelers told him, "Hey, you're a legend. We love you here, but if you want to play for us next year, you got to take a pay cut because we are not going to be paying you this type of money for this type of inconsistent work." And the more and more, I'm telling you, the more and more defenses get better as far as faster, stronger, which is already happening actively, the less 40-year-old quarterbacks are going to be seeing having success.
Right.
I'm having a feeling that over the next 3 or 4 years, pretty much everybody's going to be drafting a quarterback every year. I think you're going to see that. You know, I know a lot of teams have had that mentality in the past, but I think moving forward now, it's even more important to understand that, like, I'm not blaming the Packers for what they did with Jordan Love. I'm blaming them for how they did it. They traded up. You know, they decided not to take another playmaker and decided to take a backup quarterback high in the draft and trade up for them. I just don't think that's a smart thing. But at the end of the day, I still do believe that you do need to draft a quarterback every year, whether it's first round or sixth round or seventh round, whatever it may be. I think you need to do that no matter who your quarterback is. But to the writings on the wall for the Packers, they really want Jordan Love to be the guy because they wouldn't have traded up if they didn't, right? So I think they see the time ticking themselves and the potential out in 2022, and I think they see themselves easily slotting in Jordan Love and hopefully him having like that Patrick Mahomes type effect.
Right. Eric Carbonell says Rodgers and the Packers share the blame, although giving Green Bay an edge of the most fault. Yeah, I don't know, dude. Like, I guess you could blame the defense in the first half, but then you could literally just blame the offense in the second half. Like, they, outside of, I just call him Corey Dillon. A.J. Dillon had a couple of those big runs.
Nice runs, yeah.
Yeah, dude. They, you know, that's the one thing about Tampa. It's like Tampa's one of those teams where they're so good against the run. Yeah, you know, every once in a while, you're going to break up you're going to get a 10-yard run, whether it's by effort, the offensive line's just blocking great, whatever the case may be. But Tampa's been so good against the run where after you break that 10-yard run, they're going to start sniffing it out and make you throw the ball again. And that's what Tampa Bay did. And, you know, them missing Aaron Jones, it hurt. But at the same time, I don't want to say it didn't hurt because, again, I just mentioned, you know, Tampa Bay statistically are the best run defense in the NFL. And they really were stopping Aaron Jones, and they were really hitting him. Like, Jordan Whitehead was putting everything he had and hitting him. Devin White, since he had come back from COVID, has been on 150. This brother has not been on 100. Yeah. He's been on 150. That's how crazy he's been since he came back from the positive COVID test. So the thing with, you know, it's – I'm just, again, you could go half and half. You know what I'm saying? The Green Bay didn't put together a full 4 quarters.
Right.
They put themselves behind the 8 ball to have Aaron Rodgers come back and win the game. And when he had opportunities, because let's also not forget the drop pass, the 2-point conversion by Lazario in the, or no, it was St. Brown in the back of the end zone.
Yep.
He drops that. It's still a 5-point game. You still got to score a touchdown. You know, what could have been an easy 3 points or forcing Tampa Bay now to have to score a touchdown to keep the game out of risk. You know, let me put it to you like this, bro. Matt LaFleur did something that Tampa Bay has done at least 3 times this year, but it didn't work out. Tampa in the game against Atlanta, the first one in Atlanta, Tampa Bay is up by 4. They just make the comeback. They're up by 4 now. You go into the fourth quarter. Atlanta has no timeouts. Okay, they have no timeouts. It's 4th and 4. It's somewhere around the 30. If you go for it and you make it, the game's over with. Bruce Arians says, no, we'll kick the field goal. We'll make it 7. We'll let our defense win the game. They do just that. He did that in the game against the Giants too, where the Giants offensively started to click. Tampa Bay is at a position where they can run the clock out. Bruce Arians says, no, we'll go for the 3. We'll trust our defense. And that's what happened with the infamous non-defensive pass interference call. Matt LaFleur tried doing the same thing, and it just didn't work out basically because someone grabbed Tyler Johnson. It was blatantly obvious it was a hole. You know what I'm saying? So that's why I think maybe I'm so much harder on Aaron Rodgers than I am on Matt LaFleur, because if Aaron Rodgers didn't look like high ass in the last drive where you threw 3 passes that weren't even close, like Matt LaFleur was like, dude, I gotta take my chances hoping that they could pick up Tom Brady one more time. It sounds stupid, it sounds far-fetched, but again, at the end of the day, dude, it just didn't work out. And
they still had all their timeouts too, so it's not that crazy, right? Like they still had all their timeouts.
And the 2-minute warning still.
2-minute warning. It was like almost 3 minutes left. So I think at the end of the day, like, fine, there's plenty of blame to go around, right? Like that's not what we're here talking about. But I think the number one thing is like just a sense of denial from the people who have watched this game and came out the other side thinking, oh, well, I mean, that was Matt LaFleur's fault, or, oh, that was – first of all, it's everyone's fault, right? It's Aaron Rodgers is definitely a huge part. But listen, we know what quarterbacks are in this game. The quarterback position is the most important position in all of sports. I don't care what anyone says. You can at me, whatever you want to do. But the quarterback is the most essential player to the team in any sport. And when you look at the quarterback, they have a higher sense of responsibility. That's why you praise them so hard when they do what they do, right? You don't you don't just go, Aaron Rodgers, he was pretty good. No, like you go, oh my God, when he does something crazy, you go, holy shit, he did something crazy. But the flip side of that is when he underperforms, you have to notice it. You have to take note of that and really understand the fact that the Packers have a lot of blame game to play. They can do that all off season. They can go to Cabo and do it in the nice weather as well. I'm just saying that in terms of like who the blame goes to, it's everybody. And Aaron Rodgers is a part of that and naturally a higher percentage of that because he's a quarterback. And I'm sorry, it's the same thing. If the Bucs came out last week and were in the same exact position and Tom Brady was 0 for 3 in that last drive and Bruce Arians, said, I like to risk it, but I'm not going to risk it this time. We're going to get the field goal and Tampa Bay loses the game. You already know what the headlines are going to be. Tom Brady was 0 for 3 in that last drive and that just didn't happen. So you have to really be realistic about this. And of course, this is all speculation here. It's all opinion here. But at the end of the day, I think it's pretty clear to see that the Packers fell short, really, really short on many different fronts this year.
Yeah. So then that goes to our next conversation, because obviously we talked about the San Francisco 49ers and their quarterback situation, and Christian asked us the question earlier, but who do we think is going to get Deshaun Watson? Now, we heard in the news the other day that Deshaun Watson has officially requested a trade from Houston. They get a brand new head coach, and his name is blanking me.
I think it's David Tully.
Yeah, there you go. David Tully. David Tully, who was the offensive coordinator of the Baltimore Ravens, who had a quarterback who struggles throwing the ball and all these 32nd in offensive category stats, couldn't wait for Eric Bieniemy and hired. You get what I'm saying? So, and I'm gonna get on that in a second because I have an issue with the Rooney Rule in the NFL, I always have. Deshaun, they come out and say they're not going to trade Deshaun Watson. That's what Houston said. They're like, we're not going to trade him. They're probably not going to get a package that they want from him. Remember, he said he would even go to the New York Jets. That's how much he wants to get out of Houston. And now, you and I have talked about this many a times about what's going to happen with J.J. Watt. And there have been reports that Houston is actually looking at the trade market to see what they can get from a J.J. Watt. Something tells me Houston might stay firm on this. And I really think that they're not going to trade Deshaun Watson for the same reason I just said. They may feel like they're not going to get the legit value that they're going to want from a Deshaun Watson. Like we as podcasts and armchair GMs and whatever other term you want to make out there, we can come out with every crazy trade scenario where you have the Jets giving up the number 2 pick plus a pick next year plus a first round 2 years
Plus
after
Sam
that.
Darnold. Yeah.
And Sam Darnold for Deshaun Watson, which is way too steep for a pick.
Yeah.
Because no offense to everybody, Deshaun Watson might be talented, but bro, I've seen him fold in big games as well.
Yeah. He's not exactly top tier.
You feel what I'm saying? I understand that he's athletic. I understand that he's good. I understand he has a good arm, but how all that athleticism can't always go into wins and success. That has to mean something. There's going to be days when your defense is going to struggle. Okay? There's not a defense in the world. Even the 85 Bears had a game that they lost where the defense wasn't as good. Even the 2000 and what is it? The 2001 or the 2000 Baltimore Ravens, you know, even they had L's, but the offense is able to pick them up. I've seen Deshaun Watson in games, even with the great DeAndre Hopkins, come short. So do you really want to trade 3 first-round draft picks for an athletic quarterback without the success? No. And I think that's why when I see some of these trade scenarios, like I've been hearing people talk about, well, why don't the Bears go out there and get Deshaun Watson? But what are you going to give them that's worth the package?
Yeah, you can't even afford it. Yeah.
You can't even afford them. So what are you going to do? Yeah, it's a great idea. Yeah, it's it's far-fetched, but Houston's going to ask for the world. And so, but Deshaun Watson just happens to be the headline because of his age. But you got Matt Stafford. Detroit came out and said that they agreed to part ways. He's going to find somewhere. And, there's all these reports about Matt Stafford going to New England. And my buddy, Chef Paul, he's a diehard Patriots fan, and he was telling me that he was hearing stuff about the Patriots going all in for Matt Stafford. My problem with New England is who is going to separate from him to get him the ball. Think about it like this. Everybody made fun of Tom Brady the last year he was in New England because his career in New England happened to end the same way Jameis's career ended in Tampa, where they both threw pick sixes, right?
Yeah.
But the problem was the same issue that no one wanted to talk about when Tom Brady, when they said he's old and washed up and has no arm. It's the same situation that both Cam and Nate Sudfeld just dealt with in New England this year. Yeah. I don't think Cam Newton's that terrible of a quarterback, but when you have no one that can separate and could throw the ball to, Matthew Stafford's not going to fix that. You had an opportunity to get DK Metcalf, and you went with N'Keal Harry. Julian Edelman's 80 years old and one concussion away from not even knowing he's even in Boston. You have some of the slowest tight ends. You got defensive pieces coming up, but New England has no playmakers whatsoever. That's why the team that no one is talking about, who I think should go out and get either Watson or Matthew Stafford to pretty much save face, are the Denver Broncos. You put Matthew Stafford in Denver if they fix their offensive line issues with Jerry Jeudy and Philip Lindsay and Royce Freeman and Noah Fant.
They're going to get back. You got Fant. You got I'm blanking on their number 1 pick, their number 1 wide receiver who was injured this year. They have a really amazing wide receiver, number 14.
That's not named Jerry Jeudy.
Cortland Sutton.
Sutton.
Yeah. Then you got Melvin Gordon. Melvin Gordon we haven't even mentioned.
Thank you. Not Royce Freeman. So you're going to have Melvin Gordon and Philip Lindsay, a really good 1-2 punch wide receiver. You have 2 talented tight ends. You have a nice little receiving core. Von Miller's going to come back from his injury to pair up with Chubb, Bradley Chubb.
Bradley Chubb, yeah.
Dude, Matt Stafford to Denver to me makes sense. And if I'm the Broncos, I'm on the phone talking about like you can even get away from getting a Matt Stafford and not having to give up a number 1 pick. You might have to give up a 2. You might have to give up a package. You might give them Drew Lock just as a if you don't draft the quarterback. But if I'm Denver, I'm on the phone because they can't keep affording in the AFC West. When you see right now the Raiders are more or less stuck with Derek Carr. You have Justin Herbert, the young gun in LA, and then you have Jesus in Kansas City. You got to catch up. I think that's one thing that killed Denver last year was Drew Lock didn't make the plays. If you can get a healthy Matthew Stafford out of Detroit in a new system that will better fit them, I swear to God, I think Matthew Stafford to Denver, to me, makes the most sense. And if you can get 16 games of a healthy Matt Stafford, I'm not saying they could win the AFC West, but they're definitely going to be in contention because I think LA is maybe 2 years away from being somewhere. The Raiders are very iffy to me because they've gotten better record-wise, but play-wise, is still the same, but the record somehow they were 7-9 one year, they were 8-8 this year, so they're creeping up. You know what I'm saying? So I think if you're Denver, you got to be on the phone. Like Deshaun Watson's going to be worth too much.
Yeah,
you could get something decent without giving away your first round draft pick for Matthew Stafford in Detroit. I'd get on that phone quick.
Yeah, I think that you just spoke exactly to what we were talking about how high value quarterbacks are in this league, where like there's no other position or player where you could even mention giving up 3 first round picks, another possible mid round pick, and I just think everybody right now is so desperate to get that quarterback, and you know it's like if you look at it in Miami, for example. They're a team that has a lot of assets coming from, you know, the rebuild or what we call the tear down from the last couple of years. So, you know, maybe you think about that one. I think Miami and New York are probably the only teams that actually have the capital to do what they need to do to get it. So I think that's one of the issues. But going back to the Texans, I mean, listen, the Texans can say whatever they want, right? They could say, we're not trading him and he's our quarterback and da-da-da. But when Deshaun takes the unfollows Houston and takes all of the stuff off social media from Houston, when he's out in the media saying, no, I don't want to be here. This organization sucks. When you got Andre Johnson, when you got former DeAndre Hopkins and former and current players coming to this guy's aid, it's a bad look for the Texans. It kind of reminds me, you know, when you're thinking about like getting rid of star players, right? And like, oh my God, I don't want to give up this player. But if the player just basically puts you out in front of the whole world, what are you going to do? Are you really going to have enough gall to bring this guy back after he's like gone out of his way to trash the organization, gone out of the way to trash the ownership, out of the way to trash the way that they handle their operations, out of their way to trash the head coach? I mean, listen, David, I don't even think he was an OC in Baltimore. I think he was a quarterback's coach, if I'm not mistaken, because Greg Roman's their offensive coordinator.
Oh, that's right.
So,
yeah, you're right.
So to me, like that is a slap in the face if you're Deshaun Watson, because you're like, hey, I got the one of the best young up and coming coaches in the league. He's about to play in the Super Bowl next week, and he doesn't even get an interview. I just think right now the Texans are far too gone. I think they almost have to trade the guy. But again, it goes back to value. Like, you're not going to give this guy up for 1 first-round pick. That's too low. But you're also like, okay, then what about 4? No, 4 is too high. So, like, you're going to have to find a medium here. And I look at it and, like, we'll see who goes first. But it'll be interesting to see if the Rams can unload Goff before Watson because then you look at the trade value that they got and you go, okay, I think Watson's better than Goff in my opinion. And Goff just netted them X, Y, and Z. So in order for us to give up a guy who we think is better, we're going to need, you know, A, B, C, D, F, G. So I just feel like there's a lot of factors that come into it. But one of the huge factors is that, like, Deshaun Watson is putting you guys out in the media and telling everybody that is listening that you guys suck. I think it might be time, and I think this is a time where the McNairs will step in and say, let's make this move. Let's get rid of – I talked about J.J. Watt last week because I think he's another guy who trade-wise, it's going to be hard to trade him. Nobody's going to take an old defensive lineman who has injury issues who you have to pay almost $20 million a year to. That is rough, man. Nobody really wants to do that in this league, and the Texans would just be better off just cutting him and taking that cap space and going out and finding better free agents. So, yeah, there's going to be a lot of movement this year, and I feel that a lot of it is going to have to – it's going to be the first domino. Like, who's going to be the first domino? Is it going to be Stafford? Is it going to be Goff? Is it going to be, I talked about it earlier, but, like, when you're looking at the NFC as a whole and Carson Wentz is in that conversation, I mean, Dak Prescott, you have to remember he hasn't even signed that contract, right? Like, we're still going to see what happens with Dak Prescott now.
That's right.
Washington desperately needs a quarterback. When you look at the NFC right now, there's a lot of hungry teams who really need it. So it's just about who that first domino will be.
Yeah, no, I'm with you on that. I totally forgot about Washington needing a quarterback. Again, I want to put, so I think Tyler Heineke had a good game, but are we really going to make him, starting quarterback all of a sudden after good game? You know what I'm saying? That. So exactly. So so I want to bring up Eric Bieniemy because he seems to be and I swear to you right now, this thought that I'm finna give you just hit in my head as you were talking. I don't like the Rooney Rule. As a black man, I could tell you 100% that I just simply don't like the Rooney Rule because all the Rooney Rule is getting someone's hopes up for something to save money on. I understand the intention of it. I understand that the NFL wants there to be diversity around head coaches and this and that and everything else. But if we can go back many years ago, remember former Bears defensive coach Greg Blash?
Yeah.
When the 49ers got rid of it was Mariucci, Steve Mariucci.
Mm-hmm.
This all happened in the same year. So the 49ers fire Steve Mariucci. He then goes and interviews for the Detroit job and got it. But the funny part was Detroit didn't even look for a black coach. They was like, Mariucci's the guy we want, went to Matt Millen. Matt Millen said, you're our guy. And the NFL still fined him $100,000 because they didn't interview a black coach. Mm-hmm. And I was on the fence about it because I understand the rule. But if this is the guy that they wanted, how can you tell somebody that they have to interview someone that they don't want to interview, or I'm going to fine you $100,000? That goes to now my second point about Greg Blash. Greg Blash was going after that 49ers job. And it was him, and I can't think of whobody else. And they brought in Greg Blash for 3 interviews. I'm watching ESPN when they used to religiously have that ticker on the bottom, like when it first started. Breaking news out of San Francisco. Scott Erickson has been named new 49ers head coach. Who? Who's Scott Erickson? Some fired head coach from the Seattle Seahawks, hasn't been in a head coaching position in 6 years, and he beat out Greg Blash, who's coaching a defense led by Brian Urlacher that was top 5. So you brought in an old head coach. So why even bring him in for the interview if you were going to talk and bring in Scott Erickson? And that's why all this hype and hoopla with Eric Bieniemy, in my opinion, is borderline rubbish. I'm gonna tell you why. Because I think Eric Bieniemy is in a better position than people want to think. If I'm Eric Bieniemy and I'm looking at my situation, I'm in Kansas City. I got a quarterback that just signed for a 10-year, $500 million contract. I have a head coach in Andy Reid who every year he's in the playoffs, they ask, is this going to be his last year? How many years does he have left? How many years is he going to continue coaching? If Kansas City beats Tampa Bay on Sunday and he wins another Super Bowl, is 2 enough? And if I'm Eric Bieniemy, why would I leave Kansas City to go coach the Jets, to go coach
Right.
Houston, who's a flipping mess, to go coach who else got fired? LA. I mean, Justin Herbert is monstrous, but I think Eric Bieniemy likes appreciates the attention that's surrounded by him.
Yeah.
But the only person who's not disappointed in all this is Eric Bieniemy. I think he wants to stay in Kansas City because if Andy Reid retires, who you think's the next man up? Your offensive coordinator, the man behind the master plan. You know, the guy that's getting credit but not as much as Andy Reid. You get what I'm saying? So I think Eric Bieniemy is doing the right thing by staying in Kansas City and buying your time because Houston's not a better situation. LA's not a better situation. New York's not a better situation. Oh, who else has got a new head coach?
Philadelphia.
Philadelphia is definitely not a better situation when you got Carson Wentz, who's what, $30 million against the cap, and he doesn't even want to be a backup to Jalen Hurts, even though right now Jalen Hurts technically is the more efficient of the two quarterbacks. You get what I'm saying? So that's my thing with Eric Bieniemy. I get it. I understand. It sucks. But I think Eric Bieniemy is doing the right thing by staying in KC, and I think he's just going to bide his time. And when Andy Reid's ready to step down, Eric Bieniemy is pretty much going to step in. He's going to keep the same offensive game plan. He'll probably keep the same defensive coordinator, and it will be his show. So I think I really think the NFL needs to look at this Rooney Rule because I'll be damned you get my hopes up just because you can save $100,000. That's basically how I look at the Rooney Rule to be. Like, I understand, like, if it wasn't in place, we would never get considered. I don't believe that to a heightened extent, but don't use Eric Bieniemy as your example of the Rooney Rule when Eric Bieniemy might be in the best position to not leave and just wait it out in Kansas City.
Yeah, I think the Rooney Rule in theory is not bad, right? Like, if you look at it in what it's supposed to be, it's not bad. But I think, first of all, it's proven that it doesn't work, right? It doesn't do what it's supposed to do, which is to encourage teams to consider more black or minority applicants. But there's not really you don't have to really look far to see a team with diversity in your team. When you got two black coordinators, I think your special teams coordinator and one of your linebackers coach. I think you guys have like the most black people on or black coaches on your whole staff. So
Bruce Arians was trying to get invited to the barbecue, bro.
To the barbecue, right? He wanted the extra plate, right? He wanted the plate with the.
He wanted to give himself a plate.
And you know what though? I think you mentioned it the best, which is that maybe like Eric Bieniemy wants to interview for these people, but I think maybe these teams are sensing that the same thing you're sensing, which is that Andy Reid is, listen, I'm not making a breaking news here, but there's no guarantee that Andy Reid doesn't just retire after next Sunday, right?
Right.
So
win or lose, right?
Yeah, win or lose. So I think the Rooney Rule helps and gets more candidates considered. But I think it's been proven that it doesn't help with getting more coaches hired. And I just think, with Eric Bieniemy, it's a special sort of case because when you've got a guy who has like passed with flying colors with Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid, and pretty much everybody around the league is talking about this guy, and your team refuses to interview him, that's different to me, right? Like, fine, honestly, to me, this guy's a no-brainer to be interviewing for every single open position, right? Doesn't necessarily mean you have to hire him. Doesn't necessarily mean he has to accept your job offer. But I just think that one thing that I sense from the whole Deshaun Watson drama is that I think he feels a little bit slighted that the Texans organization has a really bad history with just black players in general. And, Bob McNair was one of the first guys after the kneeling stuff to, mention, the inmates running the prison. And I don't think a lot of people have recovered from that. I think that's a hard one for people to forget. So who's to say Eric Bieniemy even wants to go to Houston? That's another huge thing. It's like, does this guy even want to go? So I agree with you. The grass isn't always greener. And for a guy like Eric Bieniemy, man, what a nice – listen, if you win a Super Bowl next Sunday and then you're possibly like maybe have to wait one more year even to take over that team with Patrick Mahomes locked up for the long term, Travis Kelce locked up for the long term, Tyreek Hill locked up for the long term. They're a great drafting team too. That's another huge thing. Like, nobody wants to give Kansas City the organization a lot of credit. First of all, they drafted Patrick Mahomes. Like, that is right off the bat, you got to give them credit for that. But then if you look at some of the drafts that they've been able to put up when it comes to offensive linemen, when it comes to position player, I mean, like Mecole Hardman was the guy that like they got late in the draft, and then this guy all of a sudden is like a game changer. And I know he had a weird game against Buffalo, but that's the type of talent that you got. I mean, you have two of the fastest players in pretty much the whole league and maybe the whole world in Mecole Hardman and Tyreek Hill, and you got the best tight end in football, in my opinion, in Travis Kelce. So you're right. I don't think it's a guarantee that Eric Bieniemy necessarily wants to leave.
Yeah, dude. I just thought about that. I'm like, well, where does everybody want him to go? And I'm like, why leave Kansas City? I think, you know what, to be honest with you, you know who else I would put in that same category? How about Todd Bowles or Byron Leftwich?
I was literally about to say that. Yeah.
Because Bruce Arians, I know he's going to stay for a few more years. I really think once he feels that either Byron Leftwich or Todd Bowles is ready to step up and take that position, and it's nothing against Byron Leftwich, I just think with Todd Bowles having the experience as a head coach, he might get the edge. But if you're Todd Bowles, do you really want to leave a Super Bowl situation in Tampa to go coach Atlanta, who's one Matt Ryan trade away, one Julio Jones trade away? I mean, these guys are getting older, and at some maybe not Julio. You know, Julio's always on the fence, but you're gonna have to do something with Matt Ryan.
Yeah, and nobody's gonna take those contracts too. That's why a lot of people were mentioning, why didn't Atlanta trade Matt Ryan and Julio Jones? Because nobody wants that contract. Nobody wants to take that cap hit. And I mean, Julio. Let's be honest about Julio. Like, if an organization all comes together in a room and they're in the conference room and everybody's kind of like scratching their papers and everybody's doing the research, and you come out the other side of it, are you really thinking that that's a smart investment in Julio Jones, a guy who's on the injury report every single week? It seems. You know, I just can't. You know, I can't fathom a team saying, "Here's 2 first-round picks." Or I know New England is sort of in the conversation for Julio. But maybe that's a year too late. I'm sorry. Like, if you wanted, if you know, you should have probably gone for that trade 2 years ago.
Yeah, and maybe Tom never would have left New England, but
that too.
Yeah, exactly. So I thought about that. I'm like, dude, maybe Todd Bowles, because remember, I think there was a lot of reports that teams were considering him. Yeah. But once again, I think I think some of them was a Rooney Rule, and I think, you know, Todd Bowles was probably sitting there like, forget that. Bruce is getting older. You know, maybe on the low, he's told them like, hey, look, what I'm going to tell you guys stays here, but we'll fool the media. I'm not sure how much longer I have left to keep doing this. Yeah. But I'm going to stay here until I know that one of you two is ready to take the reins, and then I'm going to pass it down to you. And I really think I'm not saying I don't think that Byron Leftwich is head coach material. I just think Todd Bowles having that experience puts him on the edge. But I wouldn't be shocked on that. So that's why, I said if I'm Eric Bieniemy, dude, just stay in KC. Like it's not like, you know, Bill Cowher got out at some point, and Tom Coughlin got out at some point, and, you know, Dick Vermeil got out at some point.
What happened with Bill Cowher?
Bill Cowher.
You know, Bill Cowher went off, and then what happened? They bring in what's his face?
Mike Tomlin.
Is escaping me. Mike Tomlin. And hey, they haven't done that bad with Mike Tomlin. And remember, Mike Tomlin was another guy who stepped up and was on that staff and stepped up to be the head coach. So, but also another thing to consider for Todd Bowles is that it's not sexy to bring in a defensive guy as a head coach anymore. Like, to see the Jets, I think made, if not the best hire, one of the best hires I think of the offseason, Robert Saleh, but nobody's talking about it because he's a defensive guy. And, there's really not a lot of sexy appeal to that. It's like, okay, he's going to make the Jets defense really good. And to me, Robert Saleh is a good example of a guy who has all of the right qualifications, but gets no respect, that the type of the respect that he deserves, because he's a defensive guy. And again, if that was Eric Bieniemy, I mean, the media would have been all over the Jets and how, oh my God, what a hire! That is he going to find the next Patrick? Is he going to get Deshaun Watson and make him Patrick Mahomes? It's just there's so much speculation around offensive head coaches and none around defensive head coaches.
Exactly. Yeah. So yeah, you're probably right about that. But if Robert Saleh, no offense, dude, but the Jets, in my opinion, are maybe one decent wide receiver, maybe one, because I think the Jets have 2 draft picks in the first round this year, because they have their own, and then obviously the Seahawks first round draft pick for Jamal Adams. So, and I mentioned earlier how deep the running back class is, and I think the Jets are a team that could go for a running back. Le'Veon Bell leaves, Frank Gore's 58. I'm over exaggerating, but he's still running.
How is he still playing?
I don't know. You know what I'm saying? I don't even know. But yet he's coming back for like a 19th year, and they could really use. I wouldn't give up on Sam Darnold quite yet. I don't think Sam Darnold's as bad as a quarterback as everyone makes him out to be. I just think that he's had no wide receivers and had a head coach that had no idea what he was doing, and it makes Sam Darnold look bad. And no offensive line out, and you just and think about it. The Jets used to be a team that had Nick Mangold, Alan Faneca, and DeBrickashaw Ferguson all on one offensive line, and you couldn't get through for jack. And now, Mekhi Becton has been good. I know he was in and out with injuries. I think he's a stud, but the rest of the line is tough. So I still think, you can either go – they need to go wide receiver at 2. I don't think you need to trade your whole future to get Deshaun Watson. If he couldn't – dude, at the end of the day, if Deshaun Watson could – like I said, if he could barely succeed with DeAndre Hopkins and took 50 steps back with what he had, dude, the Jets receiving core is no better right now than the Houston Texan receiving core. Yeah. So you're really going to mortgage your future to get what? 3, 4, 5 more wins from what they are right now? That still makes you a 500
You'd waste another year, too. You'd waste another year on his belt and, hope that you're good next year. And it just – that's why I'm like, you know what? If you're going to trade for Deshaun Watson, you're a contender. That's why I think Miami is like really – really going to be an interesting one, because I think they, obviously, missing the playoffs in the last day of the season kind of leaves a bad taste in your mouth. But Miami wasn't bad this year. They just lacked the talent. I think they made a lot of adjustments on the defensive side of the ball. Mm-hmm. Offensively, though, they lacked a lot of the talent that they needed, especially like at skill position. We talked about like Myles Gaskin and, Salvon Ahmed and some of these guys that they had in the backfield, which is disgraceful. So, and then, Devontae Parker is pretty much the only wide receiver there. And you got Mike Gesicki, who's a pretty good tight end, but also offensive line. They, put a lot of money into the offensive line. It didn't work. So I just think Deshaun if he's going to go somewhere, it's going to go to a contender, because like the Jets, man, you're not going to win. Like, you're not going to be in a playoff contention even with Deshaun next year. So why even go for that? And I think Robert Saleh is probably thinking, I can get 2 damn good either defensive players or 1 wide receiver and 1 defensive player, and I can mold them into what I need. Like, you remember Javon Kinlaw? They traded what's his face to Indianapolis. His name is escaping me too for some reason. Remember they traded him for the first round pick.
DeForest Buckner.
DeForest Buckner, yeah. And then they bring in Javon Kinlaw, who, let's be honest, is not as good of a player, but he had a monster year under Robert Saleh because the guy just knows how to coach him up. So I just think if you're the Jets and you ask your head coach, I'm sure he'd tell you, listen, I could do really well with like Devontae Smith and at 2 and a next level defensive lineman at whatever, late in the 20s or teens, whatever the Seahawks pick is. So I think people, the mentality is changing. I don't think people are, first of all, like this idea that, the draft picks are like super, super, super important. I mean, look at your team, for example. Like, the Tristan Wirfs thing, you didn't imagine that he would be a top 10 right tackle in the league in the first year. But then he comes in and he shows that, and it shows in the running game with Ronald Jones. It shows that, not a lot of people touch him, touch Tom Brady when they're going in on him. So, like, those types of picks can have that type of effect. It doesn't have to always be a quarterback.
Right. Oh, and I also want to give credit to Aaron Stinney. The same guy that everyone made fun of was the lowest rated player in Madden, has had two really phenomenal games.
Yeah.
Two phenomenal
and good coaching. You have to credit the coaching staff, right? Like, to say you lost one of your best offensive linemen, and the next week you have to put in this guy who's clearly not prepared, and he's looked extra prepared, and the Packers didn't really do much against him either.
Exactly. And also Donovan Smith. Donovan Smith needs all the credit in the world, dude. He's been amazing. Think about it. Everyone was concerned about him in that Washington football team game because Chase Young is a monster, and Chase Young had maybe 4 hurries, and that was it. He never got touched. And then here comes Trey Hendrickson and Cameron Jordan. Trey Hendrickson finished in top 3 in sacks, if not top 2. Cameron Jordan's had a field day, barely got touched. We see the game against Green Bay. I think Preston Smith had 1 hit, and I think he had a sack, but the rest of the game, Tom Brady was clean. You know what I'm saying? Donovan Smith, that offensive line has really stepped up and given Tom Brady enough time to make plays and whatnot. So they definitely deserve credit. But I definitely want to give all the credit in the world to Aaron Stinney, the right guard who filled in for Alex Kappa, who broke his ankle in the game against Washington. And he stepped up and has done a great job. So we're going to keep our eye on the NFL as things goes on. But I do want to get over to what was the biggest story, I guess, not called AFC NFC Championship Sunday. And that most definitely was the UFC fight between Conor McGregor and Dustin Poirier and
things didn't go as planned, huh?
I'm going to put Conor Nuthuggers in the same boat as Green Bay Packer fans because I don't know if you saw my status, but here comes the excuse train right on time.
Ring
Conor McGregor lost because he hadn't fought in 18 months, and if he didn't, stop taking so many months off in between, bruh, he's fresh.
Yeah,
he's fresh.
And nobody gave Nate Diaz or anybody else that type of treatment when Nate Diaz was out for a year and a half and came and fought Masvidal and got his ass whooped. Nobody goes, Nate Diaz has ring rust, and he didn't say it either. He's like, listen, I lost, So it's such a huge excuse train, and I'm glad you mentioned that because remember how I told you last week, man, whoever's doing PR for Conor McGregor is doing a tremendous fucking job because they made this guy seem to be like, Winston Churchill before the damn fight. And then after the memes after the fight alone is enough to make a guy go and retire. And, honestly, dude, not far from that. I'm telling you. One more loss like this, he's going to wrap it up and go box somewhere, I think.
Oh, Conor, the same guy that came out and said he wanted to fight 7 times in the next 18 months.
Right, yeah, exactly. And you know what he said? He said, hey, I'm good to go. So like the UFC can, once my medical suspension. First of all, he got medically suspended for 6 months. That doesn't always hold because they can reevaluate him in 30 days and see how his ankle's doing. But like to me, Nick, it's even more embarrassing because like Dustin Poirier didn't do anything that crazy. He did low ankle kicks. Really, really focused on Conor's lead leg and then grappled in the first round, which everyone knew he wanted to do. But the fact of the matter is when he was able to grapple and get Conor in positions that Conor didn't want to be in, I think Conor was a little bit more hesitant to get in the clinch with him. And then you saw it. I mean, that I don't think anybody works the fence better than Dustin Poirier does because when Conor was against that fence, he knew exactly what the next move was coming for Conor every single time. And obviously that knockout was ugly. I just think that Conor, man, he's put himself in a position where I think the fight that makes the most sense now is Tony. I think Tony is on the decline. I think Conor's on the decline. I think you make that happen. But this idea that Conor was going to put on this performance to make Khabib come out of retirement was so silly. And I just loved Khabib's response to it, which is like, this guy, I think he told Dana after the fight, these guys aren't on my level. And Dana agreed with him, and there's no turning back from that now. So I think the next fight is probably going to be Dustin and either Oliveira. There's another couple guys that you could throw in there, but I think Dustin clearly deserves the full strap, not the interim strap. And I just think right now it's going to be tough on the matchmakers for the UFC, because what do you do with Conor now? You don't want him on the undercard. You don't want him fighting. You know, like do you really want to see Nate Diaz Conor 3? I mean. I'm not jumping at the bit to see that.
Exactly, and it's like one of those where if you get it, you're like, yeah, okay, this is cool, but you know,
I'm not gonna buy the fights.
No, hell no. I'm not gonna go out and be like, you know what? Yeah, I think I got another 60 laying around. Hell no, you're not gonna do that. So I'm with you on that. Yeah, dude. Again, dude. Dude, I feel like the word overrated should be in our show title because it's thrown around so much. But again, that's because, you know, I'm the type of guy that just, if the hype needs to be there, then I'll put it up there. But if it's not, it's not. And I feel like this continually keeps happening where you have guys like, you know, Conor McGregor, you know, everybody loves Conor. ESPN was all over his nuts. Freaking Stephen A. Can't not slob over the sack of flipping Conor McGregor. And then when you call him out of how he sucks, just like Aaron Rodgers, the excuse train comes and everyone has a reason why he lost. Maybe, how about this? Conor's just not that good. You know, there's certain UFC fighters that do decline. Like Chuck Liddell was on top of the world for the longest. When he got knocked out by Rampage Jackson, his career went under like that. It happens. You know what I'm saying? And it just makes, every time Conor goes out, runs his mouth and loses, it just makes that Cowboy Cerrone fight look even worse because Cowboy was on his way out and everyone's like, oh, look, here comes Conor. He's back. Oh, he's great. No, he fought somebody that was 2 steps below his level on a full decline, like a nosedive decline. So no, that wasn't. It was shoulder strikes. Like that's fluke, bro.
Oh God, that's fluke. And then the shoulder strikes during the Dustin fight, it was so silly because, like, you know, Dustin tried it on Conor and Conor tried it on Dustin, and like real fighters don't get affected by it. It's funny because like Masvidal came out and said, "Dude, you could throw 1,000 shoulder strikes at my face. I'm not getting knocked out. It is not happening." So, yeah, you're right that Cerrone fight looks even more of a joke. But what's even more of a joke, and I'm glad you mentioned it, ESPN was talking to this guy and bringing up quotes like he's saying, "I'm the best I've ever been. I'm in the best shape I've ever been. I'm the most focused I've ever." I mean, Ariel Helwani, who's usually a very down the middle guy, was all over Conor this week, or last week rather, and just couldn't get enough. And they're eating it. And for some reason, Conor, you know what it is about Conor? He's a showman. And when he's like, you know what? He's like Donald Trump in many ways. He's like a guy who, when you're in front of him, he says all the right things in front of your face, and you go, "Oh my God! Like maybe this guy isn't so bad. Like maybe we're wrong about this guy." But when he leaves the room, he's like contradicting himself on a daily basis, hourly basis, and that's what I saw out of Conor, which was like very huge, confident bravado. He was talking about how his coach. I mean, you have to remember, Nick, this guy spends millions of dollars to do his training camps in Portugal. He has a specific center set up with all of the, you know, jiu-jitsu side. You got the boxing rings, you got the cardio. So, you know, this is not like, I wonder if he was prepared. No, this is a guy who's telling you, I'm the most prepared I've ever been. And Dustin made him look bad. And then we also have to remember how bad Khabib made Dustin look. Like, Khabib made Dustin look like nothing, right? And the fact of the matter is, the UFC was hoping and praying to every god and prophet in the universe that Conor knocked out Dustin this last week, because they really wanted Khabib back. And I think the Khabib fight is really interesting because you get Khabib Conor 2, And if Conor can continue, continue the hype and somehow beat Khabib, you're looking at one of the best trilogies of all time, and possibly ruining Khabib's record of the no losses. But that's just they counted their eggs before they hatched, and now you look at it, and UFC is in a really bad position right now, Nick, because the heavyweight division is sort of up in the air until Stipe and Francis fight. Then you've got your other top star in Jon Jones, who is supposed to be in the heavyweight division, still without a fight and waiting for the winner of that fight. Then you're looking at Israel Adesanya, middleweight, who is now going up to light heavyweight to fight Jan Blachowicz, and that puts another. So that's 3 divisions now that are on hold. Then you look at this fight. Khabib is technically still the champion, and they haven't stripped him of his belt yet. So, like, one thing that's a really big pattern is that the UFC would rather keep the revenue high than to make it so that it's a competitive league. Nobody looks at the UFC as a competitive league anymore. It's an entertainment league now, right? It's a league where who are the 2 best fighters, not the best fighters, who are the 2 fighters that are going to bring us the most buzz leading up to the fight? And, like, when you look at Bellator, I know Bellator is lacking in talent, but the product that Bellator puts on, first of all, it's 15 fights a night. Most of their cards are free. Like, the business model for Dana White and the UFC is going to be put a dent in 2021, because first of all, that ESPN money's running out, and you have to remember that WME bought the UFC for $5 billion like 6-7 years ago. So they want their cheddar back on that too. So the UFC is in a tough position right now where, like, by the way, they're off this week, but next week they have a card, and then they'll have consecutive cards up until the next couple of months. Like, let's say, for example, like, I don't think this is going to happen. Let's say Stipe wins against Francis. Stipe hijacks the title one more time. Then you have to wait for Stipe and Jon Jones. And you already know that Stipe is going to take 8 months to even get ready for that.
Right.
And then on top of that, there's no, like, then you've already, so then again, the Izzy and Blachowicz fight, if Izzy, for example, somehow wins against them, he's a champ and good for him. But then you just held up both the middleweight and the light heavyweight division, which has some up and coming stars in them right now. The only problem is that Izzy has beaten a lot of these guys in middleweight, and I think his path is hopefully, I think what the UFC, Jon Jones, and Israel Adesanya are hoping for over the next year and a half is that Stipe, it doesn't really matter who wins the Stipe Francis fight. The Jon Jones versus whoever the winner of that fight is, Jon Jones wins the heavyweight title. Israel wins the light heavyweight title and has the middleweight title, and they put Izzy against Jon Jones for whatever it may be. I think it might be, they'll probably put it up for lightweight because I don't think you could do 3 divisions. Like, you can't have one guy hold 3 division belts. I'm sorry. Right. I know it's cool. Right. It's fun to say. Just doesn't work for the league. So, man, the UFC's in a weird position right now, but to see Conor and, listen, Conor has changed his tune a little bit. He's no longer seen as the guy who punched the guy in the bar, no longer seen as the guy who threw the dolly at the bus and endangered people's lives, no longer seen as the guy who, allegedly beat his girlfriend, or no longer seen as the guy who allegedly cheated on his girlfriend. Like, the PR for this guy was so through the roof. And then when watching ESPN after that fight was like watching the White House correspondents after Trump did a stupid press conference, and they're like scrambling, like, all right, how do we make this right? Okay, let's get Stephen A. Smith on and have him talk about how first of all, having Stephen A. Smith talk about anything about MMA, quit it. There's no reason for him to be talking about MMA. He could stick to basketball. He could stick to football. I mean, honestly, I don't even mind him to talk about basketball or baseball and hockey. But he's way out of his element for MMA. He's so off base.
So off base. It's almost as bad as listening to Charles Barkley talk NCAA basketball during the tournament on TBS.
So bad.
And I don't know who keeps making that final decision, but that brother needs to be fired with, no severance pay, no extra paycheck. Stop putting Charles on NCAA tournament duty. What's the one? Oh, I can't think of who it was. There was one year where I think it was either Duke or Kansas were missing one of their big star players. And Charles Barkley's like, yeah, it's going to be great to see how he's going to do in the tournament. And Ernie Johnson's like, that would have been great, but he's gone for the tournament this year. Bro, you haven't even got to the first 64. This dude just took an L. Freaking Auburn made it all the way to what was it, like the Final Four? And Charles Barkley didn't even know 3 people on Auburn. He's just there because he went to Auburn. Like,
and I was going to say, he's an alum, too. That's even more embarrassing.
So stop putting Charles Barkley on TBS, just like I wish they would stop, or whatever it is, and stop putting Stephen A on MMA duty. It's not a good look. It's a terrible look. And speaking of Jorge Masvidal, you mentioned him earlier.
Sure.
So supposedly Ben Askren has decided to accept Jake Paul's fight, boxing match, whatever. So much so that Jorge Masvidal is supposedly teaching Jake Paul how to knock out Ben Askren in less than 5 seconds. Well, first off, let's not pretend that a flying knee didn't take out Ben Askren.
Right.
Okay, it wasn't a fist, it was a knee.
And he's not going to be shooting for takedowns. He's not going to be shooting for takedowns with his head down there in a boxing fight.
Exactly. As much as I don't want to give this fight press, I'm continuously going to watch it because I just want to see Jake Paul get knocked out. Like, I understand, Nate Robinson might have like balls of steel. There's no reason he should have been in that boxing match. Then you get knocked out. You're like the meme of the world. But the worst that came out of it is now Jake Paul's flexing even harder than he really should be.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And so, but dude, if you're Jorge Masvidal, like, why are you getting into this mix? You already knocked out Ben Askren. We understand he talks smack about you. You don't like him. You hate him. But dude, you're trying to train a YouTube celebrity to beat Ben Askren. Like, what do you get out of it? You're just going to get like 10 seconds of play, and then Jake Paul's going to go back to his YouTube channel and call out Conor McGregor and his wife yet again.
Yeah, and that
you know
was
what I'm saying?
That
like,
was so
dude,
cringe too. Like, yeah. And let me tell you about Masvidal. I'll use a little bit of a wrestling term. Masvidal turned heel after the BMF title because I think first of all, his management is one of the best management groups in all of sports. Malky Kawa and his brother are really good at getting fighters paid. But you have to remember, Masvidal fought for 15 years without getting paid. So now he's on a mission for money. And you don't have to look any further than like his soiree with Trump and like wanting to, him and Trump are real, close, and Trump sons. And then the whole Goya controversy where, the whole Goya thing happened with Trump, and then he like automatically jumped behind it and boom, his numbers start to fly. And to me, this is just another ploy for Masvidal to make a lot of money for doing nothing. Like that YouTube video, and he knows is going to net him crazy amount of views. And like, if you look at what they were actually doing, like, it's embarrassing, bro. Like, he had him like teach like some sort of staggered running punch. That's never going to work. It's never ever going to work. So the thing that bothers me is that Ben Askren's kind of an easy opponent. Like, this is a wrestler. He's a wrestler, and they're making it seem as if like this is such a huge step up from Nate Robinson. Like, oh my God, Nate Robinson was here, but man, we got Ben Askren now. And to me, I think Ben Askren is maybe 1 or 2 steps above Nate. But in reality, this guy is a wrestling jiu-jitsu guy, and you saw it in his UFC fight. The guy wanted to shoot a takedown within the first 30 seconds of the damn fight in every fight he's had. And that's what got him knocked out against Masvidal, because he didn't even have the balls to even pretend to stand in front of Masvidal. He just ran in with his head down like an idiot. And all real Masvidal did was just throw his knee up in the air. And this guy was knocked out cold. So, yeah, man, it's funny because it brings me to also this whole, remember I was telling you about Dana White, how he's like, streamers, watch out. Watch out, streamers. You're not going to be. And I was like, stream worked fine for me last week. I don't know about you.
Yeah.
Stream was working just fine for me. No cutouts, no buffering. I was good.
Exactly. So yeah, no, it worked pretty well for me too. So once again, all Dana White has to do is just get you a WWE
Yeah.
network like plan, and put them on there. I bet you would get money. I know the WWE network sold their library to Peacock, aka NBC,
Right.
and if I read
That was
correctly,
smart, man. That was smart.
it was really smart. And I think
Yeah.
now I think pretty soon you have to get Peacock in order to get the WWE network,
I heard it
whatever.
was. Like you pay for like a year. I think it's like a year's worth of WWE, and then you get a year worth of Peacock free, which is a really
Yeah.
nice marketing strategy, right? And the WWE needed that, right? They needed cash flow badly after the
Yeah.
pandemic. So to me, that's a smart move. Like I don't know who's running the shots right now. I know it's probably not Vince still, but whoever made that decision, that was well worth it, because now you're going to put more eyes on it too. Like you have
Yeah.
to remember, only hardcore WWE fans are going onto the WWE app and watching those older ones, because first of all, it's like you're not making it as accessible, because only diehard fans are going to have that WWE subscription. So now you make it available on such a wide platform, more eyes on you, the better. And I think the UFC has to do that too. I think the UFC has to pivot away from ESPN ASAP.
Just
Because I
like
think
the WWE just did.
yep,
Because now
yep,
that they're with Peacock, they pulled everything that they were doing wrestling wise has now been pulled off. So now
wow,
it's because I think, to be honest with you, dude, what you call it is on Fox,
SmackDown.
SmackDown.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that every once in a while they show like certain wrestling pay-per-views on Fox Sports 1, like some of the older
Yeah,
ones. I wonder
yeah,
how that's going to change now, because if Peacock's NBC, and I know NBC at this point, they're now disbanding the NBC Sports Network. So
yeah,
that's supposed to be going down now. And I'm like, damn, I don't know what's going on, but I know for a fact that, and it used to piss me off because sometimes like I don't want to watch the pay-per-view.
right.
I want to wait till after it's done because I'm like door dashing or whatever. But in some instance, flipping oh my god, ESPN will tell me what happened. I don't want you
Yeah,
to tell me what happened because I'm not watching it. But now that the WWE and ESPN have pretty much cut ties, maybe they'll stop informing me what's going on,
right.
especially
Yeah,
with the Royal Rumble being tomorrow. And I got a few scenarios in my head about how this whole Royal Rumble thing is going to go, because this is the first Royal Rumble where I just don't have a clear-cut winner. You know
yeah,
what I'm saying? Like last year was easy for Mike and I to say Drew McIntyre because he was hot.
right,
And you
right.
kind of just knew that he was so over, he had to win it. But this year, there's not really that guy. You know what I'm saying? Like, I really think the WWE is going to bring back someone of old. And the only name that keeps popping in my head is John Cena. Something tells me that John Cena is going to win it. Some tells me that John Cena is going to, I think it's tie Ric Flair for the most world championships,
Hmm.
depending on who they face. And then he'll have the belt at WrestleMania, and maybe he'll last till SummerSlam or the Survivor Series, have one more hurrah, and then just permanently just leave the WWE and just continue to make movies. That's kind of what I think it's going to happen. We'll
Yeah,
see tomorrow. But yeah, I wanted to bring that. The only reason I bring that up is because if the UFC stop trying to charge people an arm and a leg for a
yeah,
pay-per-view and just put it on your UFC Fight Pass, and I bet you'd get a lot more subscribers. So not only are you getting live pay-per-views, which are giving you the views, they give you the ratings, which ultimately give you the money,
yeah,
and you get access to all the old ones. So if you want to watch a fight like, Joanna Jurchik and
wait,
the Chinese lady,
Wang Li, yeah,
you feel what I'm saying? You want to
yeah,
watch that again? You can pull it up in the library. You want to watch UFC 100 when Frank Mir
yeah,
lost to Brock Lesnar, and when
yeah,
what was there was two other ones I can't think off the top of my head. You want to watch that again? Bring it back, dude. That would be genius,
yeah,
because think about it, dude. If 1 million people are paying $13 a month, if you do the math, that's at least 8, if not 9 figures.
yeah,
If you're expecting the same 1 million people to pay $70 for a pay-per-view, you're not going to get it. No. So which one makes more sense money-wise?
Right.
You get what I'm saying?
Yeah, and the hardcore base is not staying like they used to, right? They really, the UFC used to really count on the fact that their hardcore base, which is like usually 100,000 or so, is going to buy no matter what. And that's just not happening anymore.
It's not happening, right? Because for, like you said, dude, it's just like boxing, bro. Like, everyone was going to buy Conor McGregor versus Floyd Mayweather because of all the talk smack. And Conor was the first UFC guy to really step into the ring against the undefeated Floyd Mayweather. So people were going to buy that because it was once in a lifetime. But
and let me ask you before you move on, was that even that great of a fight? I mean, it's like
Floyd versus Conor. No, it wasn't.
No, yeah, I look back and I go, that was okay.
It was okay at best. Like Conor maybe got a round and a half, and then after that, Floyd Mayweather was done playing with him. That's basically what happened. So you paid $70. Basically, you paid $89.95 for a pay-per-view in HD of what Floyd Mayweather has done, basically the better half of his career, which is talk smack, collect money, swear up and down doesn't watch no tape of you, and he's picking you apart by the system.
Yeah. I think the main, one thing that I think is interesting, and I don't want to go too long on this, but I think boxing is in trouble too with what happened with like the Snoop Dogg and the Triller. I think it's Triller who had the Mike Tyson Roy Jones fight. Once they get their feet under them, they're going to be putting on shows with lesser fighters with more numbers, right? They're going to be putting on those Jake Pauls and the Logan Pauls. I mean, first of all, Manny Pacquiao is supposed to fight Ryan Garcia, and at the same time already has a contract signed to fight Conor McGregor sometime in the future. This is just becoming a huge money grab for these guys, and I think the UFC is trying to capitalize on that while they can. And also, I think the UFC was really hoping and praying that the ABC connection would work. Because remember, ABC is ESPN, and they just didn't see the type. Like last week's, I think, the Poirier McGregor fight was on ABC, and it seems like nobody even mentioned it. Nobody went, holy crap, the undercard's on ABC. Like, to me, that is a bigger deal because, like, we've been asking the UFC for the last 5-10 years, put this on a more local channel, like that's more available. Because let me ask you something. You're probably more inclined to buy a fight. Let's say, for example, I'm watching on ESPN. The undercard is just killer. I'm not planning to buy the fight, but hey, it's on ABC, right? And I'm going to watch this on ABC until I have to pull up my stream. But like, even as a UFC fan, I'm more inclined to go, you know what? This undercard has been fucking killer. And you know what? Maybe I'll give my money to the UFC in that situation. But until we start to see the quality, remember, quality is really down. I do want to give credit to Dana White and UFC for keeping everything going during the pandemic, but that has its downsides too. And one of those downsides is that they've continued to chug along here through COVID, and every single card is being affected by something COVID-related, something injury-related. And then you go from 13 fights on a card to 7, and then like the Rosenstruik and his fight with, I think it's Volkov. No, there was a couple of fights that got moved this week because of just, hey, COVID or this positive test here, inconclusive test there. It's just not working out for the UFC, I think, as they hoped, and they're not netting as much money as they hoped. And I don't know how long that contract is with ESPN, but I would imagine, and by the way, they do have the Fight Pass. I don't know if you're familiar with UFC Fight Pass. So it's basically the same thing as WWE Network with the previous fights. But the problem is you're only paying for those older fights. There's no and that's a problem, right? Nobody's going to pay $15 a month for an old catalog of fights where maybe I'll watch it once or twice a month.
That's what I'm saying, dude. You put those pay-per-views on that, I'll be more than happy to pay $13 a month because sometimes I do want to look at some of them older fights. You know what I'm saying? But I also want to be able to watch pay-per-views without it gouging because I think that's what ultimately made the WWE do the network. We're saying, dude, we're losing so much money because people are streaming it. But if I can charge someone $10 a month to get WrestleMania, which is the biggest pay-per-view, of the calendar year for the WWE, I'd rather pay $10 a month and get that than have to pay $79.95 for an HD feed, because that's a lot of money for just one pay-per-view. And that's what I'm saying with the UFC. Stop being cheap idiots and realize that people right now are at a point where, if they're going to worry about, okay, $70 is 2 meals for me and my family until I get paid or whatever, or a UFC fight, they're going to choose the meals and they'll illegally stream the fights. But if I'm paying $13 a month where I can manage it, I'd be like, oh yeah, dude. And then, watch the pay-per-views in peace like everybody else. Yeah. So I think the UFC is being super greedy right now and they should really look into it. And I just said, dude, if you $13 a month for 12 months, which is like somewhere like it's got to be close like $150 to $200 a month, right? Yeah. Times 1 million people. That's six figures. No, it's more than six. That's like 8.
It's 8.
You feel what I'm saying? It's 8 figures.
But here, part of the problem is that people forget a max. I want to say the biggest UFC fight ever had something like 500,000 bodies. So you're not working with volume here, right? You're working with a low amount of people who are willing to pay a high amount of money. But if you flip side that and make it a high amount of people who are willing to pay a low amount of money, I think you could come out just as good as you are right now. So it's a greed factor. Remember, dude, Dana White is one of the most handsomely paid guys in all of the world for what he does. And yet these fighters still don't have basic insurance. A lot of these guys are contractors, so they're not really getting the type of – I mean, listen, if you're doing 4 months of training and making $18,000 on a fight, you have to fight 5 to 6 times a year to even live because you're giving half of that to your trainers, the coaches, the gym, and then you're coming out on the other side with something like $10,000 for 4 months of work. And a lot of people are thinking, man, these UFC guys are rich. No, dude, like – 90% of the people that you're watching on cards are making $10,000 to $20,000 that night for 4 to 5 months of work. So it's a broken system that I think. By the way, I didn't think I mentioned this, but the UFC is going to be unionizing soon too, which makes it even worse for Dana White, even worse for the UFC brass, because once these guys start to unionize and are able to get bidding power and buying power, the UFC is not going to have them by the balls like they do right now. So that already went and passed in court, and it's really controversial, and the UFC is doing everything they can to throw money at it to make it go away, because if they unionize, they're going to be on the hook for 300-plus fighters a year when it comes to healthcare, retirement, any sort of career-ending injuries. And to me, that just makes sense. But to them, that's too much, and they don't want to do that. So we'll see how that works out.
For sure. I want to real quick get into baseball. I know we got a little bit of show left, but I do want to get into baseball because we did have a huge blockbuster trade that happened on yesterday, as a matter of fact. Nolan Arenado is now a member of the St. Louis Cardinals. He got traded for a slew of prospects and $50 million the Rockies will send over to the Arizona St. Louis Cardinals. I thought you made a great point. Well, actually, I had brought up when I originally had seen the deal that that Nolan Arenado actually can opt out after this year, but it's actually they extended it to where his opt-out clause will be in 2022. Then that's a huge get for the St. Louis Cardinals. Dude, we haven't talked baseball a lot over the last couple of weeks, but, we've seen a handful of moves. We saw Steven Matz got traded to the Toronto Blue Jays because right now it looks like Trevor Bauer is actually going – it seems like right now the two teams that are the heaviest bidders for Trevor Bauer are the Los Angeles Angels and the New York Mets. They're saying right now that the Mets could actually – give Bauer the highest paid per year average. It sounds like it's only going to be a 2 or 3 year deal, but they're going to try and break the bank. This is the same team that went out and traded for Francisco Lindor.
Right.
But
yeah.
I think what hurt the Mets and the National League in general was when the MLBPA rejected the DH in the National League and the extended playoffs. I think both are a mistake, especially the extended playoffs. I thought last year's playoff system, all things considered, really worked out well.
Yeah.
And I understand why people don't want to expand the playoffs, because it makes the regular season, not worth it or whatever. And I don't think that's the case. I think every team that has expanded their playoff, and I still think that the NCAA needs to do it more. It's been just good quality and good product. You know what I'm saying? And my problem and my issue is that, I think these old heads are going out saying, well, if we extend it, then why are we having a regular season? Why don't we just let everybody get in? Nah, because you have certain teams that have won 90, 95 games, can't get in. And it just made it real special. Like you saw the Florida Marlins beat the heavily favored Cubs in Chicago nonetheless. You see the Yankees beat the heavily favored Indians on the road. And then it led to Yankees-Rays, and then it led to, Rays and Astros. And the Astros, who were left for dead at the beginning of the year, and they come back, and they made it all the way to Game 7 and almost did history on the Tampa Rays. There's a lot of history, or there's a lot of excitement. And I thought MLBPA dropped the ball by not extending that and put the DH. But we saw Jock Peterson is now with the Cubs. The Yankees made a move. They traded Adam Ottavino. We mentioned about DJ LeMahieu is coming back. And Masahiro Tanaka is now not coming back because the Yankees made a handful of moves. The Yankees, for me, right now, on a low-risk, high-reward going into the season. You trade for Jameson Taillon.
Which is a good move, in my opinion.
Right. And then you bring in Corey Kluber. So right now, your starting rotation is going to be Cole, Kluber, Taillon, Jordan Montgomery, and then you still have Severino coming back from Tommy John. You have Domingo Germán, who said his head is clear. So the Yankees are they're getting these guys. And I saw a tweet from Taijuan Walker, who's telling the Yankees, "Yo, man, I'm available if you need me." And I still don't think the Yankees are done. I still think they still have their eyes on Josh Hader from Milwaukee to boost up that bullpen. So, the Rays have seemingly gotten worse. The Red Sox, I still think they're going to be bad till next year. The Orioles are on rebuilding. And the Blue Jays seem to be kind of the threat, but their pitching always is the question. They can hit for days, but can they pitch to win games? So I think that was interesting. But that Nolan Arenado trade is really good because the Cardinals it didn't sound like they really parted ways with any top prospects per se.
No, none of I think none of their top five, which is crucial. I don't think they gave up any of their top five.
And by you sending the Cardinals $50 million was pretty much just a salary dump. So we'll sign Arenado to the big contract, and if it doesn't work out, then we'll just rebuild. And I think Mike Trout is going to be next on that list. As much as people still want to sit here and act like all of a sudden that are we still on? We still on? Okay, I'm still on. All right, good. What I wanted to say was that they just wanted the salary dump, and I think Mike Trout is next. I really do. The Angels might think like, oh, he's going to be here for his entire career, and he's going to be here forever, and this and that and everything else. I don't think that's the case. I really don't. I don't think that's the case. I think Mike Trout's going to get traded soon. The Angels aren't going to be able to win with him. The Angels aren't going to be able to do anything with him. I mean, that's just facts. That's just facts. So big move by St. Louis, and St. Louis has one of the best. You're gonna have an infield that has both Paul Goldschmidt, and you're gonna have what's his name too. That's crazy. That's crazy. It's crazy. It's crazy. Baseball coming up soon. As a matter of fact, we'll be doing our spring training segment coming up here soon. Because spring training is going to be coming up here soon, so we'll get on that pretty soon as Mack is back.
Yeah, my bad. My AirPods died.
Oh no, it's all good. But yeah, man. I was just saying, if I'm not mistaken, St. Louis's infield now has Nolan Arenado and Paul Goldschmidt.
Yeah, and then they're bringing back. They're going to be bringing back Adam Wainwright. They're going to be bringing back apparently Yadier Molina, and apparently they're not done. They have money to spend. And remember, they were kind of a shocker for Marcell Ozuna a couple years ago before he went to Atlanta. And I think he might be another guy that is a candidate for coming back. So I just think that St. Louis, I think what it is they sense the Cubs are on the decline. You got Pittsburgh, who's perennially is going to be selling the farm. Milwaukee somehow is always in the conversation to trade their best players, even though they are good, but they're constantly trying to trade Hader, constantly trying to trade people from the bullpen. I mean, their bullpen is sick, but they're always trying to trade people from it. And then on top of that, when you look at the Central, it just isn't top to bottom what it was. I think St. Louis is realizing that if they can get, now they know they can get above the Central, if they can get above some of these other NL teams, like, again, we're still early in the season, but the Dodgers, the Braves, and some of these other teams in the NL, they probably are sensing, we're not too far from a World Series appearance at the very least. So it's interesting to see what Nolan Arenado does in St. Louis, because you have to remember, Arenado is an A-plus fielder, but he is a very streaky hitter, and they can't depend on him for a 300 year where he's going to drive in 100 plus RBIs. That's the thing about Nolan is he's going to have some really hot streaks. He's also going to have some really slow streaks at the plate. But you're getting the Gold Glover at third every single day. So I guess that's enough for me. I mean, I'm probably wondering the same thing you were wondering, which is that, like, where was my team in this conversation? Because I know the White Sox already have a third baseman, but man, you could have really, really done some damage if you just picked up that salary, gave him that extra year. Whatever week, I would have given up better prospects, I'm sure, than St. Louis, because if you would have looked at our infield, or again, the Yankees are in consideration for that, I think it would have looked much better than St. Louis.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. And I agree with you with the Milwaukee thing. It just seemed, they're always in the mix, and then, like you said, next thing you know, Hader's on the block, and then they haven't really mentioned Yelich's name yet. And I know before you had cut off, I had said that I think Mike Trout is going to be next on that trade block, because my thing with the Angels, I don't want to say they suck, but it's just like, when is this team going to be good? Like, how much longer are you going to keep Mike Trout around? And Albert Pujols is 50, but then once you get past Albert Pujols and Mike Trout, Shohei Ohtani, I know the whole pitching and DH thing is cool, but this is a guy that's coming off of Tommy John, and it's going to be coming off of some situations with his elbow. And I think it's going to come to a point where he's just going to be a DH alone. And,
and Anthony Rendon, they gave him a lot of money last year, and I'm not sure that kind of came to fruition like they were hoping.
No, it didn't. It was the heat of the moment, and Rendon was looking to get paid rather than just stay with Washington and try and win another championship. He went to go get paid, and it didn't make the Angels any better. You know what I'm saying? And so that's why that whole WAR number to me is a joke, because everyone's like, oh yeah, Mike Trout's WAR is like 10 every year, but the Angels don't win over 70 games.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Like, it's okay. Like, okay, if you hit, let's say you hit 338 home runs and you hit like 117 RBIs, it's going to be a mark for a great season. But if the next guy below you hits like 315 for 40 and 145, but let's say that They'll say like guy A is Mike Trout, and let's say guy B is, oh, I don't know, give me another really good guy in the American League. Well, let's say Vlad Guerrero Jr.
Yeah.
Okay, let's say Vlad G comes out with a season like that. Mike Trout is going to win MVP because as soon as you look at the WAR, it's going to be like Mike Trout's WAR is going to be like 10-8, and Vlad's going to be like 6-7. And you're like, well, look at that WAR number. But if the Blue Jays won 20 more games than the Angels, what is actually WAR? A win above replacement? Replacement of what? Either you win or you don't. Either your numbers mean something or they don't. You know what I'm saying? So that's why I'm like, dude, how much longer are the Angels going to just, goof around and not make this team better before Mike Trout says, you know what, it's time for us to part ways?
Yeah, no, I agree with you. And I think, the thing is, it seems like the organization has sunk enough money into where they're going to say it's going to be Mike Trout or bust for us for the rest of his career. I wouldn't blame them if they did that. But like, for example, like a trade to Philadelphia or a trade to some of these teams that can give up prospects and take on that type of salary, that might be really enticing to a team in another year or so if and when they're trying to rebuild. But I agree with you. It's like, where is the leash at? It's like, I'm not sure. And I listen, WAR's a complicated stat. It's not an end-all, be-all stat. Like, it's not, I think, baseball sabermetrics fanatics are so crazy about the idea of being able to have a one stat that you can look at that encompasses everything. And I think that's short-sighted because you have to remember Mike Trout's WAR is always really high because he is a very good defensive player, and that weighs pretty well, and he does not have a lot of negative plays on the offensive side, meaning he doesn't strike out a ton, and he puts the ball in play a lot. So I just think that in general, people are going to skew those stats. But my thing with Mike Trout is just that they have tried to bring in talent to pair up with him, and time again it doesn't work. And they fire GMs and they fire front offices. They fired their, I don't know if Social resigned, but you got Joe Madden there, who you have to really look at this in the grand scheme of things. How much longer does he have there? Because if he doesn't have a good season there, they're going to be looking to move on. So it's very interesting because you got baseball now doesn't have like a salary cap, right? So, teams can decide, you know what, I want to spend $300 million or $500 million this year. But, when you're looking at it in the grand scheme of like COVID and what happened last year, it's interesting to see that team. Like, the White Sox are one of those teams where they haven't been shy about going and getting guys. They just re-signed Carlos Rodon earlier today to a little bit less than what he would have been worth. I think his worth was around $8 million, and they signed him for around $3 million. So he's had some injury issues. So I think that makes a lot of sense. But yeah, with no salary cap, it's really tough to call. And actually, I got a little distracted, Nick, because before we go, I want to ask you, I just saw a tweet that said that the Bears are actively in talks with Detroit for Matthew Stafford. And, to me, first of all, the Bears are in cap hell, so I'm not sure how they're going to have to make that happen. You'd have to restructure with Khalil Mack. You'd have to restructure with Kyle Fuller. You'd likely have to cut anywhere between 4 to 5 guys that are really good players for you, including Akeem Hicks. Akeem Hicks has got a pretty bloated contract for next year. He's one of the only guys that will get you $10+ million off of your salary cap. So I just don't see how that's going to happen. I guess we'll see. If the Bears trade a first-round pick for Matthew Stafford, I'm done. Because, you have the number 20th pick this year that can yield you something. I don't care if it's a quarterback or not. But if you're going to trade that to the Lions for Matthew Stafford, man, that is it's a tough pill to swallow.
Yeah, I'm with you. And I don't feel like the Bears are in. Okay, here's the problem I have with the Bears, though. The problem that I have sometimes is if the Bears were on the cusp. Okay, I'll put it to you like this. If the Bears this year had a season like they did, is it 2 years ago with the double doink?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Matthew Stafford makes sense.
True.
Matthew Stafford doesn't make sense right now.
No.
You see what I'm saying? Matthew Stafford is a guy who I feel needs to go to a team where the quarterback would make a huge difference. In Chicago, I don't think the quarterback makes a huge difference. Okay? What I'm saying is you need more offensive line help. You need another wide receiver. You might need another running back to complement Montgomery. You might need some more interior line help to maybe help out.
Safety. Yeah.
You feel what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So if you're thinking that Matthew Stafford is the answer to what ails the Bears, in my opinion, it's the wrong way to go.
Yeah.
You know, I feel the Bears are at a position right now where that window is closed enough to where at some point you have to restart and rebuild. That means that you're going to have to do a better job of, if you feel like Mitch isn't the guy, fine, Mitch isn't the guy. Then get rid of him. Nick Foles ain't the guy either. Yeah. Because after they beat the Bears lost, what, 6-7 games in a row?
Yeah, 7. Yeah.
And of those 6 or 7 games in a row that they lost, at least 5 of those games were winnable.
Yep.
And Nick Foles couldn't make the plays. Yeah. You know what I'm saying?
And you remember that's after you bench Mitch for no reason, for no apparent reason.
Right. You benched him because he was struggling against Atlanta. Okay. Yeah. But the way Atlanta was playing, Mitch was due to come back on him.
Yeah, he would have made that same comeback that Foles made.
Exactly. Yeah. So that's why if I'm Chicago and you say it's the 20th pick.
Yeah, what they're saying is that it's going to be draft capital. So, they won't be trading players for players. So if it is draft capital, like, listen, if it's a second round or a third round pick, I'm all for it because Mitch is not coming back this year. He's going to be a free agent this year. The problem with Nick Foles is that you don't gain anything by cutting him because his salary's already paid for. So you don't gain anything by cutting him. So he may be a guy that just comes back for the sake of he's already paid for. You might as well keep him.
Let me ask you this question. Would the Chicago Bears make a Washington football team-esque, how do I put this? Okay, a Patrick Mahomes-esque trade. Remember, the Washington football team traded up 9 spots to get RG3. Mm-hmm. They were sitting there at 10, and they swapped with St. Louis that year to get RG3.
Yeah.
The Kansas City Chiefs traded up 4 or 5 spots from where they were at to move up to, it was either 12 or 13.
Like 10 or 11, something like that.
Something like that.
Yeah.
They moved up 5 or 6 spots to get Mahomes. Jesus Mahomes. Could the Bears, because if the Jaguars get Trevor Lawrence, and the Jets decide not to trade and go with Devontae Smith and keep Sam Darnold, how far does Justin Fields drop? You get what I'm saying? I saw a mock draft where you had Justin Fields falling all the way down to 8 or 9, wherever the Lions are picking. And that would make sense if the Lions are parting ways with Matthew Stafford. That would be, I wouldn't say the same as the Bucs getting Tristan Wirfs, but a guy that you weren't expecting to be there falls to you without you really having to move out. The Bucs moved up to get a spot to get Wirfs, but it wasn't nothing like huge significant. Right. Could the Bears put a package together where if Justin Fields gets to a spot right before Detroit, who is going to need a quarterback, and Justin Fields is there, and Matt Nagy says, I feel like Justin Fields runs this kind of offense, which is somewhat similar to what he ran in Ohio State, and I got a young, athletic quarterback that can make plays with his feet, might throw the ball a little bit better. You feel what I'm saying? That to me would make more sense because now you have a foundational piece for the Bears to get better. Trading for Matt Stafford is a win now guy.
Right.
You feel what I'm saying?
Let me just cut you because the problem is the mentality of the Bears is that they need to win now because you have to remember, Nick, this team mortgaged their future for Khalil Mack, and then they mortgaged their future by locking up Eddie Jackson, by locking up Kyle Fuller, and then potentially Allen Robinson. We don't know if Allen Robinson is even going to be back next year. So, I think that mentality makes sense if you are in a rebuild mode. But to me, the Bears still feel like they're in win now mode. And it's weird because maybe the defense is, but the offensive line isn't. You still need, more position players, skill players. Maybe Nick Foles is a great backup quarterback, but not necessarily the guy you want starting. So I think the Bears mentality is skewed right now. I think the Bears are thinking they're too far deep. They can't give up on Khalil Mack now. They can't give up on, I know Akeem Hicks is a cut. He's a cut, whatever you want to call it, candidate. But when you look at it, the Bears have to make like 4 or 5 or 6 moves just to be able to have a free agency period this year. So to me, I'm okay with sit tight at 20 and draft Trey Lance or draft somebody that's not, necessarily on the radar right now. Because to me, you're more than likely going to get a player that you want at 20, whereas you're going to be forcing a guy at 8 or 9 for Justin Fields. And to be quite honest, I'm just, I'm not sure about Justin Fields. I think he's a guy who can make a splash in the league, but to say that this guy is worthy of that type of consideration, I don't know, man. That's Patrick Mahomes type, stuff, right? Where you're going to be trading up 10 plus spots for a guy. That's capital that you're giving up, and you're basically saying, I'm all in on this guy. Remember, Nick, Matt Nagy, there's no guarantee to come back next year. Ryan Pace, no guarantee to come back next year. Ted Phillips, no guarantee to come back next year. Even the McCaskies are not safe. So it just to me, it feels right now, it's a depressing feeling as a Bears fan because you're almost in a lose-lose situation here because they're going to have to figure out this salary cap stuff before we do anything.
Right. That's why I was saying, all this talk about the Bears wanting to get Watson and the Bears wanting to get Stafford.
Yeah.
I mean, to me, it's just not sexy moves. You know what I'm saying? Because I think you said it best. I just feel like the Bears are kind of like the perennial rock and hard place. It's like you said, the mentality is, okay, we can still win now, when the reality is maybe you should rebuild, but the Bears are going to keep making you make win now moves, but you don't win now.
Right.
So then when the future comes, you're stuck because your win now move didn't work.
Yeah.
You get what I'm saying? And that's why I feel the Bears are right. That's why I'm like, that's why I never mentioned their names as far as getting a quarterback, because I think the guy they thought was the win now guy, you're not going to move that contract. That's Nick Foles.
No.
You know what I'm saying? If you would have just waited.
Right. Yeah. But if you have to remember,
go ahead.
The Bears are looking at the Buccaneers right now and thinking of themselves. Because remember, the Buccaneers were not very good last year.
Right.
And they, brought in a quarterback, brought in a couple defensive players, added to the offensive line, and now they're in the Super Bowl. And that's a tricky thing for an organization to see because they start to see that in themselves, right? And they start to think, well, we'll make our Brady deal. We'll go and get Stafford. And then, we'll draft an offensive lineman. And then, we'll be, and they start to kind of think of things, similar to what we talked about a couple years ago with the Nationals, right? Where the Nationals win the World Series. And all of a sudden, everybody in the league's going, maybe we can do it too, and it's just not realistic. It's a pipe dream. And I think the Bears, what they're hoping is that, okay, if we can maintain this defense and add depth, I don't think Allen Robinson comes back in that scenario because you're going to be paying him $20 million, and that's going to put you even farther down. Mm-hmm. So, it's a tricky situation, but to me, Matthew Stafford's not going to be coming in here and walking on water and taking this team to the Super Bowl. I just don't see that.
Yeah, and I think the difference between Tampa and Chicago was with Tampa, the talent was already there.
True.
So you see the defense, and
And
Shaq
depth,
Barrett
too.
leads the league in
The
sacks.
depth
Right,
was there for Tampa, right?
right. You're seeing Shaq Barrett lead the league in sacks, and then you see Vita Vea and Sue in the middle, and then you have the speedster and Devin White, and
Yeah.
the biggest question is the secondary. But then when you look offensively, you had a stout line, but then you just draft Tristan Wirfs, and then you still have Mike Evans, who now this year has had 1,000 yards in 7 straight seasons, which is an NFL record. You had Chris Godwin, who had only dropped 4 passes going into the playoffs in his entire career. You bring back Gronk. You have Rojo, who's a young running back. Tom Coughlin, and not at the time, but he, I guess, spoke the prophecies, cut Leonard Fournette. The Bucks bring him back. So the difference was the Bucks had talent at the helm. They needed, it's like building a robot, and then you just need the titanium heart for it to go. And Tom Brady proved to be the titanium heart, because he was bringing leadership and championship mentality to a Tampa Bay locker room. And even though it didn't work out in week 1, weeks 3 through 5 until we ran into the Bears, they were like, okay, yeah, no, we could buy into this. And after that horrible game they had against the Bears, notice how the penalties against Tampa Bay started really reeling back, because as much as everyone hated Brady because he didn't shake Nick Foles' hands, as far as I'm care, who gives a shit? At the end of the day, the very next week, which I think was against, I don't want to say Oakland, but I do want to say Oakland. They were penalty
Oakland, because then you guys played Kansas City after that, right?
Right.
Or was that later in the season? No, you know what? Because the Bucks
was Green Bay.
Pretty early in the season. I remember that. Yeah.
Yep, it was Green Bay. After we lost to y'all, it was Green Bay. And they came out and smacked Green Bay. And how many times did Tampa Bay get called in the penalty in that game against Green Bay? 0. So all that Mitch Jensen was doing, and all the mental mistakes against the Bears, because everyone was like, how did the Bears beat us? No, we beat us.
True.
15 penalties for 100 and some yards.
Yeah.
Come on, man. We should have won that game by at least 5 points. We left
dropped
a lot of yards.
Few picks, didn't execute on all.
First and 40.
But also that was, listen, that was a turning point for your team. That was like one of those where your team sort of starts to look at themselves and go, we're better than this, and we just did this on national football. Remember, that was on Thursday night. So, I think it took, and also like that Kansas City game is a good example of that too, where the Kansas City game, you take that L, but after you take that L against Kansas City, you kind of start to look forward and go, that second half was pretty good. I think our defense did a better job towards the end as well. And then you take those small wins for the rest of the season. And I wouldn't be surprised to hear that contributed to, obviously, the Super Bowl run, which, again, big game next week here, and can't wait for it.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Well, we're getting towards the end of the show. I do want to say congratulations to Alexis Lafreniere, who scored his first NHL goal against the Sabres, and it happened to be in overtime. So the Rangers, hopefully, dude, David Quinn's driving me nuts with this switching lines and defensive men stuff. Dude, okay, you have one bad game. That doesn't mean to keep switching up the lines till you figure something out. That's not how you get consistency in the game, player. So we'll see what happens with that. Like, I like David Quinn, but now the question is going to be, the Rangers have given you this plethora of talent.
Yeah.
And you're coming out 2-5 and whatever in the first few games. I'm pretty sure his seat's gonna be high. JD, John Davison, our president, can feed us with the whole we believe in David mess, but I think the writing's gonna start being on the wall. So we'll see about that. And then I really quick wanted to talk to you because this story came up again, and the story I'm talking about is NBA, and it's the Bulls and the Knicks about Zach LaVine. I've seen this story now come up at least 3 times, and the third time I saw it, I think it was from Woj or it was from another credible NBA source, where the Knicks have now started to monitor Zach LaVine in Chicago and talking about a potential deal if the Knicks stay within playoff contention. And I think that is basically the ultimate prize or the ultimate deal factor in all this. If the Bulls are still in contention, why make the play?
Right.
Why make the trade?
Yeah.
If they're in the contention to at least make the playoffs, they're not gonna make that deal. Now, if the Bulls fall off the face of the earth and everyone forgets how to play basketball, and the New York Knicks are still in the mix, I think Chicago makes it somewhat of a credible deal.
Yeah.
But I still think that Tibbs still has influence with Derrick Rose because his name has come up.
Yeah.
Emmanuel quickly had another phenomenal game, 25 points last night, while Elfrid Payton only had 2 points in like 20 minutes. And I think his welcome is starting to get worn out in New York. And I think everyone's like, oh, we should start Emmanuel quickly and put Elfrid Payton on the bench. I think the only way that starts if the Knicks make a deal for Derrick Rose. Now the Clippers are interested as well. And we'll see what happens because obviously the Clippers would be in a much better situation than New York. I think Thibodeau trusts Derrick Rose, respects Derrick Rose's game. He knows he's not the same explosive guy that he was many moons ago when he was just tearing up the league.
Right.
But he's comfortable with him to where he could say, okay, I have a veteran guard with my veteran starting lineup, but I still want IQ to come off the bench because he's the fire starter. I think that's what's going to happen. So we'll see with that. The Knicks, they won last night. They beat Cleveland, the same Cleveland team that beat Brooklyn. They beat them last night pretty handily. And, the Knicks are playing much, like as we mentioned, they're playing much better. But I'm not buying anything into the Zach LaVine trade rumors until the Bulls fall off the face of the earth towards the trade deadline. Then I'll kickstart it. But I'm not buying into anything right now. You can monitor him all you want.
Right. Yeah, you could talk about – people have to remember this isn't Garpax anymore, right? That's the main issue with that is that in a Garpax era, you could – anything could happen, bro. Like, you guys could get him right now. But with Karnisovas, I think one thing that he's talked about is that, first of all, he doesn't even want to trade expiring contracts. Like, the GM's number one thing is like, this guy's expiring. Let's get rid of him, get what we can. And he said, no, we're not going to do that. We actually want to keep people around here, and we want to kind of build a core. And Zach LaVine has 2 years left, right? So that's kind of the main crux of that is that, if he signs an extension, then I think he's safe. But I think until he signs that extension, he's always going to be on the table. But I think you hit it on the head. I think Derrick Rose makes a lot of sense. And plus, you have to look at the situation Detroit is in right now, where they are just god awful, and they need to get rid of Griffin and Derrick Rose. And I would anticipate both of those guys are on new teams in the next couple months because Derrick clearly doesn't deserve to be on a team like that. I think make so much sense in New York. Another one is Buddy Hield. I know Sacramento isn't that bad, but with Tyrese Halliburton kind of breaking out the way that he has, I wouldn't be surprised to see the Kings think of Buddy Hield as surplus. And you have to remember the Knicks have something that is really important in this league in this day and age: cap space. They have the ability of cap flexibility and cap space, and Buddy Hield already signed that extension, and I don't think a lot of teams want to touch him because of that contract. But for the Knicks, you're not really losing much. You got the money to pay. I think it makes a lot of sense, and he's a two guard too, which is really important because I think he could really help with the RJ Barrett experiment as well. So, I just think in general right now it might be a little bit too early to tell, but I think. If I were the Knicks, I'm going after Derrick Rose yesterday, and then worst case scenario, you can always go look at some backups because again, it's still really early, man. It's still really early, and I think teams are going to be evaluating what the standings look like in the next couple of weeks, and with more eyes on the NBA starting after next week, I would start to anticipate that the Knicks, and again, there's like a lot of teams right now. Like Brooklyn, I know they're going to be a tremendous regular season team. I'm not buying anything until I see them in the playoffs. But there's a couple different teams, including Oklahoma City, who has some guys that maybe they can trade you. So there's going to be some interesting ones. But I think once the eyes become on the NBA, I think we'll start to see some more movement.
Yeah, no, you're right about Detroit, dude. That team is bad. It's bad. It's tough to even watch them, and you're right. Guys like Blake Griffin and Derrick Rose, who I think signed in Detroit just to be close to home, but I don't think he anticipated that this team was going to be this awful. So I'm with you. I think there's going to be some moves, especially with some of these bad teams. I actually read something where supposedly Andre Drummond was talking about buying out his like I guess him and Cleveland have something in line where Drummond can it's a $24 million buyout, and supposedly
but if you're Cleveland,
Brooklyn.
If you're Cleveland, you might as well, because you got like 5. You just traded for Jared Allen out of nowhere. You have JaVale McGee, you have Larry Nance, you have like a bunch of other guys, and then Drummond on top of that. Like, to me, Cleveland, I don't understand their mentality with this. They clearly think that they can play with 4 bigs on the floor. It's just not going to work in this NBA.
And 4 bigs, and now Andre Drummond has entered his hat in the shoot threes pool.
Shoot threes guy. Oh my God.
Of all the guys in the NBA that should not be touching the 3-point line unless you're running up the floor, it is Andre Drummond.
Him and JaVale McGee have the ugliest offensive approaches I've ever seen.
And the NBA is so evolved nowadays where like shooting bigs is where it's at. You know,
you have to shoot a 3 now. If you don't, you're useless.
which to me is a joke, because think about it, dude. Andre Drummond on any given night can get 20 and 20. He's one of the strongest dudes in the NBA. He's like very Ben Wallace-ish. Yeah. But I think Andre has a little bit better of an offensive game than Ben Wallace ever had. But as far as strength and lane presence and rebounding, dude, they're 2 of the most solid in the game ever, dude. Yeah. And you know, if I'm Andre Drummond, if you're going to tell me that I can make Shaq, well, I wouldn't say Shaq-like money, but if I can make a lot of money basically doing Shaq-like plays, which is just stay in the hole and just be dominant force for the remainder of my career, why are you shooting threes when you have 4 or 5 other capable dudes that are able to do it? Like Colin Sexton is going off.
Oh, yeah. No, and also, there's only a few teams that still use centers like that. Like, I think, Sacramento's a team that probably still uses centers like that. Maybe the Knicks can get away with it. Maybe the Bulls can get away with it because, of the way that they play defense. But there's not a lot of – I'm telling you right now, there's not a lot of teams that are going to be chomping at the bit for Andre Drummond because they're worried about what he can do laterally. Like, that was his main issue in Detroit, is that this guy was a killer at times, but he never played defense, and especially side-to-side defense. Like, he loved blocking shots. Sure, you're a big man. You're going to love that. But moving laterally, it's like mandatory in this game now. And now I'm starting to understand why the Bulls were so high on Patrick Williams, because it's like this positionless basketball, it's happening. Whether or not we like it, it's happening. And, there's never more examples of it than now in the NBA, where you got, teams that can play 4 guards on the point guards on the floor at one time now, and have a small forward playing center. I mean, we've never seen this before. Even in the stretch 4 days and the Dirk Nowitzki days, we've never seen anything like this. And it's going to be interesting to see how basketball evolves, because like we talked about with Hassan Whiteside this year, he didn't, this is a guy who's like made a name for himself in this league and nobody wanted him. He was one of the last guys to sign. He signed with Sacramento, is barely playing. So it's going to be interesting to see how guys like Drummond, because Drummond, I think, maybe is thinking, I have to shoot threes, because if I don't know if people are going to want me.
Right. Exactly. Yeah, no, I'm with you on that. But it's just so ugly, because I was telling you, when the Knicks played Sacramento, all of a sudden Marvin Bagley's hitting threes, or at least he was trying to shoot them. I think he hit one, based on, everyone, the light shines in the dog's ass every once in a while.
Sure, exactly, yeah.
But the other 4 he took weren't even close.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. Wendell Carter did the same thing.
Right, and it's like, if you're Luke Walton and you're sitting there, you're like, dude, why do I have a 6'11" guy that can dominate in the hole right now, popping threes? Like, what the flip is going on?
Dude, Marvin Bagley can drive the hole and go on top of people.
Yes. So, like, the funny thing is everyone's like, oh, man, Steph Curry really revolutionized the league for, pounding as many threes in as he has. But I'm thinking, but at the same time, he's kind of made it stupid, because guys who usually don't shoot jump shots are now in the gym to show their and-one highlight tape against a bunch of YMCA guys to shoot threes. I mean, dude, how many times have we seen Hoodie Mello?
Yeah.
You feel what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Dude, you go on Facebook and famous Los has found this rare tape of Carmelo Anthony the other day in the gym with the hoodie on against a bunch of YMCA guys yamming at the bit. These guys don't play defense. They're probably starstruck. It's even Carmelo in the gym.
Yes.
And Carmelo is just doing the same turnaround that's made him famous and just yamming. And everyone's like, oh, man, look at Carmelo. He's lost some weight. He's still got it going on. And then the NBA comes when you play against real NBA talent, 6 for 15, 7 for 20, 3 for 17. I'm like, wait a minute, what happened to Hoodie Mello that we just saw on the And One Famous Los 32 mixtape of him in the gym? It's the same thing with Mitchell Robinson. Mitchell Robinson had a tape out where he was shooting threes and, was hitting them at a clip. I bet you Tom Thibodeau said, if I see you shoot one of threes in this game, I will sit your ass down the rest of this game because Mitchell Robinson is yet to pop a three. And he goes, there was a couple of times he had sent out tweets saying, one was like, I wish they would let me play. I think that one was towards the refs because they're always calling fouls on him. But then there was one where he was kind of like, man, I can't wait to unleash my talents. Like he really wants to show that he could be a stretch five. And it's like, dude, let's not start doing that right now. Like, I need more tape, bro. I just can't.
He's got
have
money.
one
That's what it is. He's got the money symbols in his head or in his eyes, rather, because it's like, if Mitchell Robinson can form a three with his defensive prowess, oh yeah, there's going to be teams that'll pay you some money for that.
He'll remind me a lot of Miles Turner from Indiana. Miles Turner, I think, was like that. When Miles first came in the game, he really wasn't a shooter, and now this dude can play inside, and if you leave him open, he'll hit a three on you. So I think that's kind of very eerily. But I think, here's the thing. If it was any other coach not named Tom Thibodeau, we would have been seeing Mitchell Robinson pop threes by now.
Shooting threes,
but because Tom Thibodeau probably said, I'd either trade your ass or I will bench your ass if I see you shoot a three, you haven't seen it yet. But I think at the same time, he as in Tom Thibodeau's like, dude, I got RJ that can hit threes when he's on. I got Austin Rivers. I got Alec Burks. I got a lot of other guys. I got Emmanuel. I got a lot of the guys that shoot threes, dude. I don't need you to do it. Like, we're not that.
Just do your job.
Right, that you need to do that. So do these bigs trying to shoot threes, I don't know whether to laugh or just cringe every time it leaves their hand. Like not everyone can really be Karl Anthony Towns, who by the way has to be one guy who was happy that 2020 was over with because he has the same circle as Chadwick Boseman, because unless he told somebody to say something, we never knew he got into a car accident and had to be hospitalized. Ouch. Like they kept that on the real low until it came out recently. Yeah. So between losing his mom, his family's got COVID, now he had it, and you just realized, and we just found out that he was in a car accident, and a pretty bad one at that. Oh yeah. That dude Karl Anthony Towns had a really tough 2020.
Definitely. Yeah. 100%.
Really tough. Yeah, so we'll get more into the NBA, especially after next week. Hopefully we can get Christian back on as we'll dive much deeper into the Super Bowl, as we are approximately 8 days away from the Bucs and Chiefs in Tampa. A lot of Bucs fans were crying the blues because they was wishing we could wear our pewter jerseys. They came out with the white ones. Why not? We've won 3 road games in a row, and technically we're still the road team. Keep with the whites. Yeah. So let's keep them up. But we'll get into more NBA and NHL and Major League Baseball. As I mentioned when you came back on, our spring training segments is going to be coming up soon. And we'll go division by division, and we'll break down all the squads. And, what sucks is I love doing this, but I hate the fact that I feel in each division we're going to really break down 2 or 3 teams, and then there's going to be either 3 or 4 teams in certain divisions where you're just going to be like, boy, this team's going to suck.
We're not going to even talk about it.
You feel what I'm saying? Like Seattle, like the Red Sox, like the Royals to an extent. I would say Detroit, but they actually played really well last year. Yeah. Better than I think a lot of people were going to. But, maybe I just feel in baseball there's just these teams like Pittsburgh. What is there to talk about the Pirates?
Yeah, man, those poor Pittsburgh fans. Like, it seems like every year they have a new guy that gets brought up to a star level, and then next thing you know, it's he gets traded, or he's no longer on the team, or he got cut, or whatever. I mean, they traded Josh Bell, they traded Jamison Taylor this year. Yeah, it's going to be bad in Pittsburgh for a long time.
Yeah, it really is, and I'm pretty sure they have another couple, 2 or 3 blue chip prospects that they're ready to get rid of. The fact that this team, if I'm not mistaken, was not in the World Series, but they were definitely in the NLCS under Clint Hurdle, and then they fired them, and they've just
with McCutcheon and Marte, and
right.
And now Marte and Polanco got to go too.
Yep. So we'll see what happens in Pittsburgh, but they're definitely one of the teams. And I know they signed Jock Peterson, but the Cubs might be another one, dude.
Yeah,
they might be another one. Again, this was a team that made, like I mentioned earlier about the Bears, you made now moves,
right?
But you hurt your future. Yeah. So you signed a deal in a ridiculous contract to Jason Hayward, who you basically played on hype because everyone was thinking like this kid's going to be the next big thing, and he can't hit over 260.
Yeah.
But you gave him this big contract because you're like, oh, we need depth in the outfield. And then at times when you could have got Bryce Harper and you could have gotten a couple other guys, you can't because you got a full outfield that you can't move. Right. You got Chris Bryant, who you move from third to the outfield, who you can't move.
Yeah, no, definitely. And also you have to remember they gave up on Schwarber because they thought $10 million was too expensive. They gave up on Almora because they thought $7 million was too expensive for Almora. But then they just turned around and gave Jock Peterson $7 million to play outfield. And by the way, Jock Peterson only selected the Cubs because nobody else on the market was giving him a full-time job. Everybody was telling him, you're going to platoon, including the White Sox. The White Sox apparently offered him $10 million for 1 year to platoon with Adam Eaton, and he decided against it. He wanted to play full time, so he's clearly going to try and bet on himself with the Cubs. And the Cubs are, remember the Cubs are in a quasi rebuild themselves. So I think what they're hoping is to maybe get some production out of him, innings eater type of stuff out of the outfield. Because again, there's a lot of changes on the north side. And one of them is that the ownership group is just not that willing to spend money. So we'll see how that works. But they did decide to up their budget to buy some starters. So I know that the Ricketts just came out with that and said, no, we don't mind spending money, but we just want to be smart about spending. So we'll see. They apparently want another starter or two, and there's a couple out there. And again, I think the White Sox are probably not done themselves.
Come on, man. You need a starter or two, and you just traded one of the better ones from the NL last year.
Yep. Yeah. It's counterproductive.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
That's like if you're like, hey man, can I loan you, or like, can you loan me $1? And I'm like, yeah, sure, no problem. And I turn around, I was like, hey man, can you borrow me $1? Well, if you didn't have it, you shouldn't have given it to me.
Right, yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Or borrowing $1 from your buddy and then turning around and spending $3 on a drink and being like, bro, I let you borrow $1. Did you not have money? It's like, yeah, but I needed the extra $1 to spend my extra $2. Like, no, it doesn't make any sense. It's counterproductive.
Oh my God, dude. Yeah. So we'll break them down as well. All right, guys. Well, another full show. I think we pretty much we came with stats on Green Bay, but the Packer fans are known to just be salty dumbasses, and they're going to continue, and they're going to go against Tom Brady. And if Tom Brady wins the Super Bowl in 8 days, it's only going to get worse.
Only going to get worse for them. No, yeah, we're going to go off on them even more if Tampa Bay wins. So, yeah, I'm excited for next week because I definitely want to talk with Christian. I definitely want to go real deep. I'm gonna plan to watch the Kansas City and Tampa game from earlier this year sometime this week. Want to rewatch that because I watched the end of it, and like I said, I was impressed with Tampa Bay. But, yeah, I'm looking forward to talking about that because that's going to be a huge game.
That was another game that was a tale of two halves.
Right.
Because Tyreek Hill went in
the first quarter.
It took him to get 200 yards in the first quarter for Todd Bowles to be like, okay, maybe Carlton Davis needs help. Like, he's good, but he just doesn't have the speed. Oh, and by the way, here goes something that's stupid. I can't believe I'm going to say it, but I'm going to say it. You know, Scotty Miller called out Tyreek Hill and said he could run faster than Tyreek.
Yeah.
Let me ask you a question. Remember in the movie Remember the Titans when Allen couldn't guard the receiver in the first game, and Boone threw out Petey, and he just said, "I just want you to guard him, dude." Unless I'm going psycho nuts, there's not a guy in our secondary that can match up speed for speed with Tyreek Hill.
Yeah,
is it really genius?
Crazy,
crazy to think that hey, Scotty Miller's the same size as Tyreek. Just let him run around for a little bit. We'll bring you on the sidelines. And then if we need you to go out and have one of those amazing plays that you and Tom Brady do, we'll put you out there. All I need you to do is guard number 10. If you say you as fast as he is, guard number 10.
If you think you're faster than him, you should be able to guard him, right?
Exactly. That's all. I don't need you to tackle him. I don't need you to do anything crazy. I just want you to stay on him. When you think he's going to go fast, I know you got the catch-up speed to get him. If you think he's going to go, dude, put Scotty Miller. It sounds absolutely stupid. Tampa Bay's not going to do it. But you had believe you me that if I was Bruce Arians, I'd have been like, yo, Todd, Scotty, can I talk to you guys for a second? Look, this is going to sound really stupid. But can you play defensive back? I just need you to shadow number 10. That's it.
That's all I need.
That's all I need.
For what it's worth, though, the Bucs did a tremendous job after the first quarter on Tyreek Hill that year. And that's another thing that gets lost in the shuffle is you see the gaudy numbers from the first quarter and you go, oh my, like even if you look at the whole game and you look at just his numbers for the first quarter for a whole game, you go, oh my God, what a great game. But yeah, again, like I want to rewatch it because I remember that Tyreek really, I have him on fantasy. That's why I was following at the time. And he didn't really have much of a game after that. So clearly the Bucs have a little bit of an answer ready for him.
Yeah. And we mentioned earlier, the Chiefs are missing 2 star tackles.
Yeah,
and
including Mitchell Schwartz, who's supposed to be one of the best right tackles in the league. So that's a big loss. And who is it? Shaq? Or no, it's Pierre Paul comes off the right side, right?
It's Shaq comes off the right. Pierre Paul's coming after the left, but there's going to be no Eric Fisher.
Right.
So
no Eric Fisher. That's even harder. Yeah.
So both teams going to eat. Both sides going to eat. It's just which side's going to. It's basically pick your poison, dude. Are you going to double team Vita and let Shaq come through? You're going to double team Sue, but you can't not double team somebody because somebody's going to get in. And you saw how effective Vita was. He may not have been on the stat sheet, but if you look at the game, his double teaming and putting pressure on Aaron Rodgers helped get Shaq Barrett in there a couple times. Helped get them doing it on Sue, helped JPP go one-on-one against a backup. It was eating him alive at one point. And so, without them having an offensive line, I still think his foot's going to be okay, but Patrick Mahomes is going to be in a lot of trouble. So that's why I think, and we'll discuss it more next week, but that's why I think them really shutting down that inside game might help a little bit, which I think Travis Kelce might be the guy you might want to keep your eye on because he seems to always find them in those tough situations, so to speak. The security blanket. So, but we'll get Christian on next week and we'll talk more about that next week. So, all right, guys. Well, it's been fun. Go Bucks, but we'll talk Super Bowl. We'll dominate Super Bowl next week. I want to thank everybody that shared the show. Continue to watch us, man. We appreciate you guys. We got some big things coming up soon. We'll announce that stuff as time goes on. But Mack and I are enjoying the show, and we love when you guys talk to us and put in comments and watch and share and everything. So thank you guys so much. We'll see you guys next week. Thank you as always, Steve in the back. So for Steve, for Mac, I'm Big Oso saying so long, and we'll see you guys next week.
Peace.